Hey guys, tonight we're not setting sail into the roughest waters history has to offer. No greasy pirates, no splintery ships groaning under bad decisions, and no parrots loudly announcing secrets they barely understand. Tonight, we're stepping somewhere far quieter, far prettier, and far more restrictive. The world of the medieval princess. But before we wander past velvet curtains and gold-trimmed halls, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy these slow, thoughtful journeys through the strange contradictions of history. And leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Somehow, it's always 2 a.m. somewhere, and 2 a.m. feels like the perfect hour to think about lives that looked perfect, but felt anything but. Now dim those lights. Switch on a fan for that soft white noise hum. Imagine it as a gentle breeze through narrow stone windows. Get comfortable, pull your blankets close, and maybe tuck your feet in. Not because imaginary rats are plotting anything tonight, but because medieval castles were cold and comfort was rarely a priority. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what life was really like for a medieval princess? Not the fairy tale version with endless freedom and romantic adventures, the real one. A life where every step was watched, every marriage was negotiated, every smile was expected, and every choice already made. Tonight, with Sleepy Oogway as your gentle guide, we'll explore why being born into silk and gold often meant living inside invisible walls, why luxury came with rules, why safety came with silence, and why power was something others wielded around you, rarely something you held yourself. We'll move slowly through stone corridors, heavy gowns, and days structured by duty rather than desire. We'll see how even in comfort there was confinement, and how resilience sometimes meant enduring quietly, finding small moments of joy in gardens, music, letters, and dreams that rarely left the page. There will be elegance, there will be frustration, and yes, there will be moments that feel almost absurd, because history is full of people living extraordinary lives under very ordinary human limits. So settle in, let your breathing slow. Feel grateful for the freedom of choice, warmth, and rest you have tonight. Now, let us begin our quiet walk through why life as a medieval princess was a gilded cage, beautiful on the outside and far more complicated within. Chapter 1: The Cold Morning of a Gilded Cage. Morning arrives slowly inside the stone chamber, not with warmth, nor with comfort, but with a pale gray light that seeps through narrow slits in the castle wall. The sun has risen somewhere beyond the battlements, but its warmth does not reach here. The thick stone absorbs cold like memory, holding on to the night long after dawn has begun. Beneath layers of heavy blankets lies a young princess. The fabric covering her is rich, wool, linen, perhaps trimmed with embroidery meant to signify status and care. Yet even these layers cannot keep out the chill. Her breath rises in small clouds before her face, faint puffs of white that vanish as quickly as they appear. Each inhale reminds her that winter lives inside these walls year-round. The chamber is large, but not welcoming. Stone walls stretch upward, damp to the touch, darkened by centuries of condensation and smoke. They do not soften sound. Footsteps echo. Voices linger. Silence presses heavily. Tapestries hang in an attempt to disguise the cold, but they only hide it, never remove it. Beneath them, the stone remains unyielding. This is luxury, medieval style. The princess stirs slightly, careful not to move too quickly. Sudden motion in cold air shocks the body. She has learned this over years spent behind fortress walls. There is no fire burning yet. That will come later, once servants are awake and allowed to enter. Until then, the cold rules the room. She pulls the blankets closer. Outside, the castle begins to wake. Somewhere below, doors creak open. A distant clang of metal echoes through the stone corridors. The day's machinery of power and duty begins its slow turning. But here, in this chamber, the princess waits. Her life is protected and contained. The walls that keep enemies out also keep freedom in check. Every stone laid for defense doubles as a boundary. She cannot leave the room without attendance. She cannot dress herself fully. She cannot decide how her day unfolds. Even her waking hours belong to schedules written by others. The biting air reminds her that comfort was never the goal. Castles were built to endure siege, not to nurture softness. Thick walls mean fewer windows. Fewer windows mean less light. Less light means cold. And cold, like duty, was simply endured. Her breath continues to cloud. Servants will arrive soon with layers of clothing, gowns heavy with fabric, stiff with structure. They will lace, pin, and fasten her into the shape required of her station. She will be beautiful, admired, envied, but never warm enough, never free enough. The stone walls reflect everything: cold, sound, expectation. They do not care that she is young. They do not care that she dreams of open fields or sunlight without barriers. The fortress stands indifferent, doing exactly what it was built to do. She listens to the quiet between sounds. This is the true rhythm of castle life. Waiting. Waiting for warmth. Waiting for permission. Waiting for roles to be fulfilled. Waiting for futures decided by marriage treaties and alliances she did not choose. A medieval princess lived surrounded by symbols of privilege, yet wrapped in restraint. Her life glittered outwardly, but inwardly it was narrow, scheduled, and watched. The cold chamber is the first lesson of the day, a reminder that comfort is secondary to duty. The light grows slightly brighter. Her breath still fogs the air. Soon, the fire will be lit. The room will warm just enough to function. Servants will bow. Advisors will speak. The princess will rise and play her part perfectly. But for this quiet moment, beneath thick blankets in a damp stone chamber, she lies still. A young life, protected, restricted, admired, and confined. A gilded cage does not always shine. Sometimes it breathes cold air into your lungs and reminds you that even behind walls of power, life can be harsh, narrow, and unyielding. Morning has begun. The fortress holds, and the princess wakes, not to freedom, but to another day inside the stone. Chapter 2. A slumber of silk and stories unraveled. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we shall navigate the dreamy landscape of medieval princesshood, where the greatest danger isn't a dragon or a warring kingdom, but rather a lack of petticoats in your wardrobe. Slip into your silks and fluff up those pillows, because we're about to unravel the gilded cage that is royal life, where expectations are higher than the ceilings in your castle, and the only thing more suffocating than your corset is the matchmaking attempts from your overly eager mother. Ever wonder what it's like to live in a grand castle, complete with moats, knights, and the occasional dragon that just really wants to crash your tea party? Sound lovely, right? But what if I told you your entire life is dictated by ancient scrolls that could put a time-lapse documentary on the intricacies of soup making to sleep? Let's not forget dodging suitors who keep asking if you're into the whole being a future queen thing, while your only real passion is figuring out which knight can bake the best apple tart. So settle down, dim the lights, and grab something fluffy. If you don't have a cat to cuddle, a cozy blanket will do just fine. Now picture yourself in your French chamber, surrounded by the delicate aroma of lavender and freshly polished wood, the ambience rivaling the fanciest spa in the realm, though the only thing massaging you is your giggle-inducing anxiety about public speaking. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1370, nestled amid the luxurious confines of a medieval palace. But beware, this isn't just silk and smiles. As you stretch out on the lavish fabrics, filled with a sensation of subtle triumph, think for a moment about what it really means to navigate life as a princess. A jiggle of excitement mixed with the weight of historical expectations, heavier than a sack of potatoes misdelivered to the local tavern. Those luscious silks draped across your bed might feel heavenly, but they're also a symbol of all the choices taken out of your regal hands. Sure, you live in a castle, but at the end of the day, it's much like being the CEO of a cookie company who's allergic to gluten. Comfort may be just out of reach as you balance the delicate act of managing treaties while your gown feels like it's made for someone 30 pounds lighter. You know, it's like trying to wear a holiday sweater within an extreme heat wave. You're expected to look fabulous while simultaneously sweltering under the pressure of societal norms. Let's delve into the reality of your castle life. It's not just about glamorous balls and swooning nights. No, dear friend. It's early mornings filled with meetings that might as well be a medieval infomercial on the magic of arranged marriages, while you sip chamomile, rolling your eyes as the eldest lady-in-waiting waxes poetic about last week's court gossip. Did you see Lady Miriam's latest dress? If gowns could breed, I'd say she'd birthed an entire flock of sheep. And of course, let us not forget your allies, the ever-loyal ladies-in-waiting, who are basically the closest thing you have to a support group. Each day feels like a session of reality check, you're still single, as they muse over your unfortunate dating prospects, sparking conversations that could turn into Olympic sports. Because, honestly, who needs a battleground when you can bicker over who gets to attend the next grand ball? As you nestle into your pillow, you're reminded of the warm memories filling your chamber, a collection of precious books lying on a shelf, each holding tales spun with laughter and sprinkled with the knowledge of women who, in their impractical volume of fabrics, navigated far more than just moats and maidservants. Your heart swells with pride, knowing you are among lineage that has continually challenged the boundaries of patriarchal tradition while simultaneously pondering the effectiveness of tight lacing. Imagine, with each turn of those delicate pages, you're unraveling stories that feel more and more like your own. A captivating chronicle of survival, panic, and utterly ridiculous moments. Deciding what to wear to tea could either save a kingdom or spark the next scandalous feud. Why, just last week, Lady Beryl was shunned for daring to wear a vibrant blue tunic when everyone knows the color is possessed by the Fae folk. Foolishness or subversion? Your opinion is still pending. So, as you close your eyes and allow the night to wrap around you like a warm, encumbering blanket of dreams, know that you are not merely a princess passing through history, but a vibrant thread in a tapestry of resilience and humor. Welcome this evening of stitched narratives, where your lineage will cheer you on, reminding you that sometimes the obstacles lie merely in the hoop skirts rather than a knight's sword. And here's a thought to hold on to as you drift away. If our ancestors could navigate life wearing uncomfortable garments while concocting elaborate political marriages, surely you've got this, right? As the laughter and stories whirl around you, let them gently cradle your thoughts into a peaceful abyss where dreams flourish, even if they're just visions of rebellion against corsets. Sweet dreams, noble soul. Chapter 3. The Luxury of a Princess's Bed. Hey guys, welcome back to our absurd little corner of history. Tonight, we dive into something cozier than your uncle's old recliner, and far more entertaining than your last family gathering, the opulent yet oddly itchy life of a medieval princess. Yes, that's right. While some of you might have enjoyed the luxury of memory foam and adjustable beds, our beloved royals were nestled on mattresses stuffed with good old-fashioned straw, accompanied by a veritable army of unwelcome guests. Can you imagine your pillow being more springy than a trampoline? Or your blankets smelling like they were last washed during the First Crusade? Welcome to the life of a princess, where plush was just for the peasants, if they were lucky enough to have any sort of warm bedding at all. So, buckle up and prepare for a snooze-inducing adventure through a kingdom of discomfort that's more relatable than your last visit to the DMV. And hey, if you enjoy this trip down medieval lane, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment, only if you're truly entertained, of course. Otherwise, keep scrolling like you're avoiding your responsibilities. Now, before we embark on this journey, make sure you've dimmed the lights, turned on your fan, and perhaps set your surroundings to the perfect medieval ambience. Don't forget, you might want to wrap yourself in something soft, a blanket perhaps, not a tax-evading haystack. So, ever wondered what it felt like to accidentally sit on a rogue flea? Or how many layers of itchy wool it would take to make a proper medieval princess outfit? Or maybe you've pondered how to host a royal sleepover where your guests will inevitably question if the weird scratching under their blankets is actually a noble's secret plot to keep them awake. That's the era we're stepping into. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1305, and the only thing you have to comfort you is a bed that could make a hay bale feel like a five-star hotel. As you shift onto your illustriously straw-filled mattress, your body feels an avalanche of desires all at once. Warmth, comfort, and perhaps even a figment of hope that there are no critters ready to make a midnight symphony on your skin. Now let's talk about your royal bed. Picture this: a mattress made from coarse straw stuffed into a rough fabric sack. Doesn't sound too regal, does it? Night after night you lie down, trying to find a comfortable position, only to be met with the rustling sound of mice having a pillow fight beneath you. Yes, rather than giggling nobles, your nocturnal companions are confused rodents seeking to avoid an overshadowing cat. An all too common spoiler alert in the world of medieval grandeur. As you toss and turn, you can't help but notice the constant itching. Are those bedbugs part of your royal entourage? What a charming reminder that royal blood is about as helpful against pests as a paper shield in a jousting match. But alas, all this discomfort comes with the title, Your Excellency. Nothing like a few flea bites to elevate one's social status. And it gets better. The fabric above you is scratchy as well, probably spun from the wool of a sheep who had a particularly bad day. If you're still awake, pondering how bath time in this era isn't a thing, rest assured, your princely status won't save you from the grunge of life. Imagine going to a ball while smelling like a wet dog. You may have the finest gown, but that won't keep the princes from fleeing faster than knights from a dragon. You can't help but chuckle as you imagine the awkward exchanges over a morning meal. Is that your hare or the roast boar? I don't know. Maybe it's the new royal scent, eau de Mys. Who needs a crown when you have a bed of straw that hits harder than your siblings' side-eye during family dinner? Meanwhile, beneath all those luxurious layers of discomfort, you'd sometimes launch raids in an effort to find out if your bedding was actually a compost heap. You couldn't just Google how to deal with bedbugs. Oh no. You didn't have the luxury of an exterminator on speed dial. You were stuck trying to convince the local alchemist that potions could replace good hygiene. Spoiler alert, it was all wishful thinking. So, with every scratch and every itch, let's not forget that there were moments of strange camaraderie. In a world where even princesses had to navigate life like a game of Monopoly set on fire, your best friend was often the person across the room who would nod knowingly as you both attempted to remember which position was least plagued by your mattress's furry inhabitants. And with that delightful thought of shared discomfort, you can truly appreciate how life as a medieval princess was less do as you will, the world is your oyster, and more along the lines of do as you will, but watch out for those fleas. Seriously, though, they throw a party on your pillow. So rest your head easy and embrace the irony, because in the kingdom of itch, every princess has their plight, and it's always more entertaining than a dull royal decree. Chapter 5 Prayers Amidst Pains. Hey guys, welcome back to our merry escapade through the woolly wonderland of medieval life. Tonight, we find ourselves deep in the heart of something as invigorating as a cold shower at dawn, morning prayers in a castle chapel. Picture this. An assembly of noble souls, as lively as a cow at a butcher's convention, gathered in a stone chapel so cold it makes your ex's heart seem positively warm. The air is so brisk you could almost hang laundry on it, and yet here they are, lined up like obedient soldiers, ready to chant hymns that echo down the ages, or at least echo enough to wake the scullery rats. Now, let me ask you this. Ever tried to summon divine inspiration while sleepily balancing on the precipice of exhaustion? How about trying to squelch a sneeze while 300 years of solemn tradition weigh on your shoulders like a 10-ton crown? Yes? Well, my friend, you've just stumbled into the perfect realm of medieval absurdity. So, dim those lights, get comfy in your not-so-royal pajamas, and let's drift into the jumbled yet fascinating world of a medieval princess caught between some seriously high expectations and having to endure mornings that feel like being prodded with a pitchfork. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1325, where your castle's chapel awaits, thick with the musty scent of ancient stone and just a hint of despair that clings to the rafters like that long-lost sock you swear you tossed out. Welcome to the kingdom of, you better say your prayers or the heavens might just zap you with lightning. Or at the very least, you might have to chat with a grim-faced monk about your spiritual shortcomings. You stand among the cold stone pillars, the design as inviting as an old fridge in a power outage. It seems even the chapel itself understands early morning reluctance, with the kind of chill that could freeze the most ardent prayer into a popsicle. All around you, faithful gather, draped in layers of richly embroidered attire that might just weigh as much as a fully grown cow. Each one of them seems entranced by the rhythmic chanting that floats through the air, adding its own chill, as if reminding you of the frostbite nipping at your toes. The drone of voices is remarkably consistent, a chorus of pious monotony that could lull a honeybee into a coma. And yet, somehow, it also feels like a call to arms in the war against the mundane. Let us unite, they say, in supplication for our souls. But really, all you can think about is how your stomach has started to serenade its own hymn, grumbling against the emptiness that stretches like the vastness of a medieval banquet table, one covered in days-old bread and perhaps yesterday's leftovers from some rather unfortunate feast. As you shift your weight, those ornate gowns whisper secrets of past meals and unwashed linens, and you can't help but wonder if the princess's wardrobe was actually just a clever ruse invented by an overzealous tailor trying to assert his dominance in a world where everyone's aim is to slice their feasts, not their fabric. It's like wearing a tapestry that screams, "Look at me! I have so many choices, none of which can actually keep me warm while I freeze my toes off in prayer." The priest at the altar, A man whose beard could practically be mistaken for a bird's nest raises his arms as if trying to lift the morose atmosphere above the stone ceiling. "Heavenly Father, watch over us," he bellows, and you half expect lightning or at least a dramatic thunderclap. Instead, you're greeted only with the intense reverence of a flock so dutiful they seem to have forgotten that being serious was never a requirement for holiness. Much like a tombstone does not require much decoration beyond, well, itself. Suddenly, amidst your half-hearted attempts to focus, a tickle of a sneeze rises, determined to bring attention upon your ruffled existence in a moment of utter solemnity. It's like daring fate itself, right? Your body's firing off warning signals like it's about to embark on an epic adventure. You clench your eyes, willing it away, but alas, the sneeze is tenacious, and you almost brace for a devastating achoo to echo through the hallowed halls. You imagine that even the holy ghosts in attendance would flinch, and oh, how the congregation stiffens more than a knight caught with his pants down, eyes darting like startled deer under a moonlit sky, desperately trying to avoid being the focus of divine disapproval. You can practically feel them wondering if you've just committed the most heinous sin of all, against the sanctity of early morning prayers. Just as you let out a suppressed gasp, the priest finishes one of the longest scriptures you've ever been subjected to, and together everyone exhales. The sound is so synchronized that you might think you'd all just exited a family yoga session in a cold cave. It's the whole Zen experience, but with added back pain. This delightful ritual is inescapable. It speaks of societal pressure, regal expectations, and the curious way that life often feels like a gilded cage, complete with lovely decorations, but designed to keep you firmly in place. The princess, with her delicate tiara perched on her head like a slightly eccentric tiara-wearing hamster, drones on, pride swelling within her. Yet here you stand, dreaming of nothing more than a hot cup of something, coffee, tea, or even just boiling water. Oh, the luxury! And so, as the morning prayers drone on in a glorious loop of inertia, remember, being draped in royal garb and surrounded by solemnity doesn't mean you are immune from the eons of awkwardness, hunger, and bone-chilling cold that life can usher in with each early dawn. Even in a castle filled with golden chandeliers, it turns out that the struggle to stay awake is a universal nightly quest. And you're just trying not to succumb to an accidental act of royal slumber. As the priests conclude with a resounding Amen, you realize you'll need every bit of that energy to break the morning fast and avoid being mistaken for a sleeping beauty without the charm. Until the next chapter, where we break bread, or at least find something bread-like that won't require a teeth-gnashing struggle to consume. Until then, may your prayers be filled with warmth and humor. Chapter 6. The Fashionable Tug-of-War. Hey guys, welcome back to our whimsical journey through the medieval funhouse. Tonight, we're diving into the world of getting dressed, because nothing says royal life like getting bound up tighter than a Christmas turkey before the feast. Imagine a process so lengthy and exhausting that it could rival the average marathon, except instead of a medal, you'd earn the delightful sensation of being unable to breathe. Lovely, right? But before we slip into those luxurious layers, let's ponder a few questions. Have you ever tried to put on a pair of Spanx while someone chanted at you in Latin? How about cinching up your corset while a bard strummed a lute so out of tune it sounded like a cat in distress? You know, just a regular Tuesday afternoon in a medieval castle, where fabric choices oscillate between grandiose and terribly uncomfortable. And if you thought that having too many choices at a modern-day buffet was a headache, wait until you see a medieval princess trying to decide between layers of fabric thicker than the dust on your office bookshelf. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1367, where the air is as thick with expectation as the layers of clothing you're about to don. The sun is barely rising, but in the royal chambers, a commotion is afoot. Servants rush in and out like a scene from a comedy of errors, each bearing gowns and layers fit for a person who has no intention of moving for the next 6 hours, or in other words, a princess. You take a deep breath, which is quite the achievement in this atmosphere, filled with a heady sense of wool, silk, and something akin to desperation. It feels like being smothered by an over-enthusiastic quilt, one that insists the more layers, the better. And as you blink, the first thing you notice is the sheer volume of fabric surrounding you. Is this a wardrobe or a fabric softener factory gone awry? So the first layer is upon you. It's a simple undergown of linen. Ah, the relief, the comfort. But wait, just as you begin to think you're feeling splendidly lower class, the head maid scuttles in with a shimmering gown made from more silk than is found in an entire factory. "We need to cinch you into your formal wear," she chirps, brandishing laces like she's preparing for a medieval tug-of-war. This second layer isn't just for adornment. No, it's functionally akin to putting a boa constrictor in a big hug. As she expertly begins to pull the ribbons tight, you suddenly feel racier than a knight preparing for a joust. "Tighter," she insists. "You must show off that tiny waist." Tiny? At this rate, you swear you can hear your ribs shift slightly to the left, hoping to avoid the impending doom of the corset. Ever wondered if the medieval design team had a secret wager going on how tight they could make fashionable attire? They might have had a point, because, boy, try laughing or breathing in this. Get up! It turns out that princesses didn't just need to look regal. They also had to practice failing at basic functions, as if they were living in a performance art piece called How Not to Dislocate Your Ribs. Layer after layer. It's like a game of medieval Jenga, where one slip and you could be left awkwardly tucked into a blend of opulence and despair. Each gown seems to command more room in your lungs, so much so that you start reminiscing about those glorious days spent in simple tunics. And is it just you, or do they make tunics look endlessly practical? Now it's time for the sleeves. Ah yes, the sleeves. They puff out so extravagantly that you wonder if they might just take flight. You glance in a nearby mirror only to see an overstuffed pastry with gloriously oversized sleeves and layers, as elegant as a swan, yet as immobile as a stone statue in mid-cough. You might as well have made the thematic choice to dress up as a rather confused butter churn. And just when you think you've reached peak complexity, the maid holds up a splendidly adorned headpiece. A tiara? A helmet? You can't tell. Both are equally restrictive. She expertly places it upon your head like she's balancing a load of hay upon a slightly unstable cart. There, you look absolutely divine. Now don't move, she instructs, like she's just entrusted you with a hand grenade instead of a hairpiece. As you step back into the realm of public view, it's obvious that you're now adorning an outfit that could potentially double as a life raft, so buoyant and grand it might float away if you step into some unfortunate wind gust. You're a dazzling tapestry of wool, silk, and a very unfortunate philosophical debate about the concept of comfort. Is it worth the trade-off for all this extravagance? Forget practical skills. At this point, your only objective is to glide majestically into the next room without rolling your ankle or causing the grand buffet table to topple over. Life as a medieval princess is beautifully absurd, shackled in garments that proclaim your power while simultaneously brokering deals on your ability to take a simple breath. So, as you strut through the opulent chambers of this castle, remember that royal life is not just a gilded cage. It's a fashion statement that often comes at the very real risk of fainting from sheer constriction. And here you are, all dressed up with no place to go, and certainly no way to breathe without feeling like you're in a medieval tug of war. Until next time, breathe deeply, but not too deeply. One can only have so much extravagance without the risk of unexpected ideological collapse, after all. Chapter 7. Breakfast of Champions. Not. Hey guys, welcome back to our ludicrous expedition through the medieval carnival. Tonight, we're cranking the clock back to the ambiguous little window called breakfast, where the most anticipated meal of the day is served on a platter that might as well be called what's left over. Imagine an early morning feast that's less of a majestic banquet and more akin to a table full of mystery meat and lukewarm wishes. Now, just a gentle reminder, if you enjoy this bedtime joyride through the Middle Ages, a like, a subscribe, or even a casual comment would be much appreciated, but only if you actually enjoy it. We're not here to corner you like a medieval tax collector. So, find your coziest blanket, dim those lights, and let's indulge in odd questions that might just keep you up way too late, pondering like a philosopher dressed as a peasant. Ever contemplated what it would be like to have breakfast in a cavernous hall made of stone rather than your charming kitchen? What if your morning ale was as weak as your neighbor's excuse for borrowing your spade? Or perhaps you've dreamed of starting a day with a loaf of bread so hard it could double as both toast and a weapon. Yes, indeed. If you've ever wished your morning coffee had the same thickness as gruel, then you're in just the right place. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1367, where the sun is barely peeking through the ancient rafters of the Great Hall, illuminating an array of medieval table settings that make you wonder whether the original designer was part of a very questionable performance art group. The air smells of wood smoke and something vaguely reminiscent of damp stones. Think musty basement vibes, but with more historical significance. As you shuffle into the Great Hall, prepare for what can only be described as a breakfast buffet of nostalgia, minus the luxury of exciting options. Tables stretch out like an endless line of misfortune, laden with the kind of hearty bread that looks like it's seen more sunrises than you have. It's dense, crusty, and begging for some kind of miracle to transform it from last week's errant observation into something remotely edible. This is not artisanal sourdough. This is bread that seems to have been baked by a time traveler who left their sense of culinary wonder at home. Oh, and let's not forget the drink, a delightful concoction that the locals call weak ale. Or, as you might think of it, what happens when someone forgets the barley and just stews some sad dreams? It's the kind of beverage that would leave you feeling less refreshed and more like a minor historical footnote outlining the dangers of poor breakfast choices. Ever thought about starting your day with something that tastes like regret and fuels the unfortunate decisions of others? Exactly. In fact, sitting at this medieval table feels like a high-stakes game of what's on the menu. You glance down, and the options begin to blur into a comparable haze. You might spy a bowl of gruel, the medieval version of oatmeal gone horribly wrong. It's the kind of texture that's best described as woodsy mud, lovingly cooked over an ancient fire that might have been tended by someone who has never heard of hygiene. Choose wisely, you think. This could make or break your morale for the day. As you sit down, you hear the clanging of utensils, more clamor than elegance, while the faint echoes of laughter and conversation mix with the occasional animal sounds from the kitchen. Imagine breaking bread with someone only to realize you're sharing the table with a gentleman who thinks chewing with his mouth closed is an art form yet to be mastered. Ever sit next to someone who believes breakfast is a competition? Watching them consume a loaf of bread as if it were an Olympic sport can be enlightening. How about the charming whiffs of roasting meat, making you question whether you're at a banquet or trying to stave off cabbage-induced regret for an entire week? That's right. Breakfast is not just a meal. It's an episode of Survivor, Medieval Edition, where your only responsibility is to survive until lunch. Meanwhile, the servants scurry about, their arms loaded with dishes that could convince you that food management was an Olympic event back then, pinching fingers and sweet whispers of caution as they try to balance jugs of ale and platters of breakfast wonders. Spoiler alert, it's a wonder if anything stays on the table long enough for you to identify it. Just as you sit down to gather your bearings, a lowly bard waltzes in, strumming an off-key tune that echoes like uncertainty in this stone hall. You wonder, could I really be happy while half the court is trying to shove an inedible piece of bread into their mouths while attempting to sing about triumphs? If this isn't true art in action, what is? Before you know it, breakfast reaches its thrilling conclusion, a rambling affair filled with silent regrets, questionable choices, and that lingering feeling that maybe, just maybe, you could give up this life of luxury for some cozy, modern convenience. At least until lunchtime rolls in to slap you back into historical reality. Remember, my time-traveling friend, breakfast in 1367 might not have the flair of a Michelin-starred restaurant, but it's certainly an experience you won't soon forget, often for all the wrong reasons. Until next time, may your breakfast be less like stone and more like, actual food. Chapter 8: The Gilded Cage of Royalty. Hey guys, welcome back to our frolicking journey through the historic oddities of a medieval court. Tonight, we take an unexpected detour into the enchanting yet confining life of a medieval princess. Imagine for a moment being wrapped in the softest silks, adorned with delicate jewels that weigh more than a village cow. Sounds glamorous, right? Spoiler alert, it's about as freeing as a sweater made of chains. Now, before we spring ourselves into the prickly thicket of forced betrothals and courtly manners, just a gentle reminder. If you're enjoying this delightful dissection of yesteryear's absurdities, do us a favor. A like, a subscribe, or even a friendly comment would warm the cockles of this narrator's heart. Though I'm not entirely sure what cockles are, and I'm hesitant to Google it lest I uncover a rabbit hole of unnecessary historical woes. So, dim those lights, wrap yourself in your coziest blanket, maybe even throw in a light snack, because we all know bedtime snacks are the real treasures of adulthood. Have you ever found yourself dreaming about escaping a life where every move you make is scrutinized like you're a contestant on the Great British Bake Off? But instead of cupcakes, you're serving up political alliances? Or pondered what it would feel like to live in a castle where your personal space is about as expansive as a postage stamp, and the nearest exit is always guarded by a rather overzealous knight with a penchant for shouting, "Halt!" at inopportune moments? Congratulations! You've just woken up in the early 14th century, a time when the air smells of freshly baked bread, but is filled with a suffocating weight far heavier than your splendidly embroidered gown. As you blink into the morning light, don't be surprised if the first thing you see isn't a charming sunbeam, but the austere face of your father, the king, as he debates a political alliance over breakfast, aka the time-honored tradition of turning your future into an object of high-stakes bargaining. Let's talk about the scene unfolding before you. Picture a grand hall, its stone walls adorned with tapestries that could comfortably represent every insult ever exchanged between rival kingdoms. The air is thick with tension, a concoction of stale ale, and more than a hint of desperation, the heady perfume of a kingdom on the brink. As you sit there, cloaked in silk whose origins are more foreign than a typical Tuesday in your previous life, you'll notice messengers flitting in and out like anxious bumblebees, each carrying tidings that could alter the course of your entire existence. Every messenger is met not with a casual "hello" or "how do you do," but with more of fervor than you'd encounter at an open sale for ribald poetry or questionable medicinal concoctions. Their news is pressing: chivalrous alliances, scandalous betrayals, and every other gripping narrative that could make your quaint village gossip sound like a bedtime story. Ah, yes, a princess's day starts not with coffee, but with the bitter realization that her life is little more than a pawn in this relentless chess game of power. But what's a princess without her options, right? Picture yourself being paraded around the court, where every flourish of your fan is just another step in an elaborate dance designed to woo the most advantageous suitor. Hooray for love! Not. Instead of dreamy-eyed knights announcing their undying affection, you're hearing every weak pickup line about securing an alliance before dinner. Would you like to build a castle together? They might coo, while you inwardly sigh and think about the last time you had a moment to yourself without being watched like a hawk. You'd think royal life offered some morsel of freedom, but alas, it's more akin to a luxurious birdcage perched upon a golden stand, gathering glances, but devoid of any real escape. Amid the clanking goblets and the plotting whispers, you hear the scrapes of arms pulling back and shifting as noblemen attempt to position themselves in your line of sight. An unspoken competition. Yes, and how enviable their rivals look, all dapper and dashing, while you dream about drooping into a pile of soft hay like an exhausted cat. Have you ever daydreamed about being a commoner? Farming your own fields, chatting without restrictions, and foraging for herbs, all while avoiding crisis talks about whether you ought to marry a duke or a count. Oh, how the grass tends to look greener when you're growing up in privilege. Your father prepares for yet another bout of negotiations, the weight of the crown visible even through the ornate jewels, while you ponder existential thoughts on your own being. At this point, you'd give anything for a day where the only pressure involved was whether or not to try that new hat style that the local tailor insists will bring you. Windswept intrigue. But life as a princess is like trying to burp an infant dragon. Awkward, a little dangerous, and probably not going to end well for anyone involved. Every decision you've ever made gets twisted into more political mileage than a rusty old cart cobbled together lovingly from misfit lumber. Each messenger leaves behind the remnants of hope, fear, and sometimes a stale pastry that is certainly not worth the price of the news they deliver. So as you watch the royal tapestry of politics unfold, remember, when life gives you messengers bearing bad news, just remind yourself that at least you're not trying to deliver hay for the next morning's breakfast while fending off a group of weekend warriors. You've got a roof over your head, albeit a heavy royal one, and let's face it, if you ever find yourself being served bitterness with a side of alliance drama, just know it's all part of the royal gig, a gilded cage where every moment feels both absurd and exquisite. Until next time, may your chains be jeweled, your chambers grand, and if you ever get jostled into a courtly obligation, just remember to fan yourself and pretend it's all terribly charming. Chapter 9. A Royal Summons and a Princess's Plight. Hey guys, welcome back to our surreal sojourn through the farcical fringes of medieval life. Tonight, we're diving straight into a scenario more awkward than that one time your relative brought up your love life at Thanksgiving dinner, the royal betrothal announcement. Spoiler alert, it's about as thrilling as discovering your favorite TV show was canceled after one season, right when it was getting good. So, let's bring the ambiance down a notch, or perhaps crank up the candles while fanning the air like you just spotted something potentially delightful. Because, believe it or not, you're about to find out what life was like as a medieval princess on the cusp of a marriage that promises more political drama than a season finale of The Real Housewives of a Small Kingdom. But first, do indulge us with a quick thumbs up or a satisfyingly quirky comment if this tickles your fancy. And only if you actually enjoy it, of course. No pressure, though. Just focus on getting cozy in your blanket fort and perhaps sipping on something warm. Maybe throw in a light snack, because what's a royal episode without a touch of indulgence, no? Now, let's tantalize those thoughts with some seriously silly but relatable questions. Ever wondered how you'd feel being told that your future was a mere bargaining chip in your dad's chess game of alliances? Or pondered the delightful absurdity of being forced to wear layers of exquisite silk while sitting through a formal dinner, awkwardly nodding at someone's uncle who talks more about his pet falcon than his own son's accomplishments? Or perhaps you've questioned what it's like to have a crown that's at least 3 sizes too big for everyday headaches, because nothing says, "I can't wait to meet my future husband," like royal discomfort. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1325, the era when melodrama was a national sport, and alliances were forged over feasts featuring more roasted meats than you might encounter in an entire modern supermarket. As you blink your eyelids into the grandeur of your chamber, complete with a bed wider than some of your friends' apartments, you're jolted into a peculiar reality. The smell of lavender hangs thick in the air, thankfully, battling the odd whiff of whatever rich stew Lord Percival thought he could whip together for last week's banquet. Now, you're not quite prepared for what's about to unfold. Your father, the king, that looming man of magnificent, albeit ruffled authority, has summoned you to his private quarters to announce the most exciting news since the invention of double doors. Oh yes, it's time for your betrothal announcement, and rest assured, your thoughts and whims about love, adventure, or even a thrilling escape plan are about to be sidelined faster than a jester dropped during an unexpected pratfall. The grand hall feels like a fancy prison, complete with an array of luxurious decor attempting to convince you that you're not just part of an elaborate deal. As you shuffle through the halls, every step is met with the curious glances of nearby nobles who seem to whisper sweeter nothings than any romantic suitor. "There goes the royal daughter," they murmur, "the prospective peacekeeper of 2 entire kingdoms. Ah, she's charming. I wonder if her father is in need of a new tax collector. How entertaining." You finally reach your father's chamber, where a chair awaits you that looks remarkably uncomfortable. Because what better way to ease a daughter's nerves than by sitting her down in what can only be described as a medieval interrogation seat. There he stands, flanked by advisors whose faces resemble that of politely restrained wolves, eyes gleaming with treachery, ready to assist with this thrilling reveal. As he clears his throat, the air thickens with the weight of what's about to be said, more weighty than a dozen uninvited noble cousins crashing your birthday party. With all the pomp of a crowning ceremony, your esteemed father begins, "My dear daughter, the time has come for you to fulfill your destiny." You brace yourself. "Ah, finally, my dream of becoming a knight," you think, desperately clinging to delusions. But no. You will be betrothed to Prince Grimwald of the Gloomy Isles. He booms, beaming with a pride that could only come from securing a major alliance. Not a real case of medieval puppy love, mind you. As if on cue, a distant bird with a keen sense of irony flutters past, cawing just loud enough to mirror your rising panic. "Gloomy Isles?" you whisper, imagining that maybe he has a habit of brooding, like that extra hot but ultimately disappointing mug of wine you had the other evening. Your father continues, plotting the details like a chef who's finally perfected his recipe for disaster. Think of the alliance, dear one. Think of the peace, the joy, the... He pauses dramatically, as if contemplating the merits of marrying you off to a nobleman, usually 2 inches away from spontaneous melancholy. Ah, joy indeed. What of my desires, my wishes? You find yourself muffled by silk and duty, as your dreams of adventurous travels fall flat like a poorly baked piece of bread. You soon realize that such personal desires are as relevant as a bowl of stale porridge on a banquet table, hardly worth a mention amongst the political feasting ahead. So there you sit, a royal pawn navigating the chessboard life has laid out for you, wearing the weight of gilded expectations heavier than your crowning tiara. You contemplate how many different ways the Gloomy Isles might smell. A hint of rain, perhaps? Something vaguely reminiscent of aggravated seagulls. And if marrying a prince guarantees your corner window view of the harbor, or merely a vantage point from which to witness the encroaching waves of bartering nobles. Thus, as your father elaborates on the logistics of a life that seems designed solely around diplomacy and events far removed from your whims, you can't help but wonder why you weren't born a peasant. At least there, you could choose what to wear, without the pressure of royal etiquette driving you mad. Life as a medieval princess may be filled with shiny trinkets and immeasurable expectations, but next to a steaming pot of self-determination, it's akin to wearing a crown that's been gilded with the dust of 1,000 lost dreams. A heavy burden, indeed. And as the weight of your impending nuptials sinks in, you realize that sometimes life's most exquisite struggles are all just part of the royal gig. A shimmering cage disguising various forms of javelins being thrown your way, disguised as princely proposals. Welcome to your new reality, O Princess of the Palace, where the price of peace might just cost your sanity. Chapter 10. The Education of a Gilded Prisoner. Ah, education for a medieval princess. What a delightful promenade through the drudgery of silk and tedious expectations. Picture this. You are not simply sitting before Lady Catherine, your all-knowing, relentlessly stern tutor, but instead, you've unwittingly signed up for a year's subscription to a royal pain in the crown, intensive training for young maidens. With a face like a hawk and a gaze sharper than a freshly honed sword, Lady Catherine has made it her life's work to prepare you for a world filled with political intrigue and foreign dignitaries whose grasp of humor is about as sophisticated as that of a stone-cold statue. So, what's on the lesson plan for today? You can practically hear the echo of your own optimism being crushed under the weight of a medieval curriculum that would make even the most enthusiastic autodidact snore louder than an old bear in hibernation. Instead of reading about gallant knights in sparkling armor or romances set against rolling hills, here you are, knee-deep in a formulaic concoction of etiquette lessons, arithmetic, and foreign languages, all delivered with the fervor of someone attempting to sell you a timeshare in an unreputable kingdom. As you shuffle into the classroom, a grand chamber decorated with tapestries so heavy they could practically be used in a game of tug-of-war with a particularly grumpy dragon, the only corner that captures your interest is the one where the snacks are stored. If only you could trade your multiplication tables for a hearty chunk of cheese, or perhaps a glass of, well, you've convinced yourself that watered-down leftovers count as refreshment at this point. What's more disappointing? The prospect of marrying a prince whose primary hobby is brooding, or the realization that you may never get your hands on a wheel of cheddar again. Amidst the daunting aura of Lady Catherine, imagine how she wields her chalk like a tiny sword against your fragile spirit. She sharpens her voice as she prepares to deliver another round of proper greeting and addressing worlds of worthy nobles. "Remember, my dear princess," she insists, "when addressing a lord, always nod twice and clasp your hands so they assume you're defrosting a particularly stubborn turkey. It's an art form, really. You're instructed to appear both regal and effortlessly graceful while channeling an imaginary flock of geese beneath your robe. How do you expect to wow a compelling court if you can't smoothly articulate your thoughts?" she drones on. "One wrong word, and you'll find yourself traded in as part of a peace treaty." Sadly, my dear, their sentiments on diplomacy are far skimpier than your royal wardrobe. The mere notion of miscommunication sends a shiver down your spine, entirely misplaced, but pressing just enough into your consciousness to make you wonder if your conversational skills can save you from a lifetime in a drab stone tower. Speaking of wardrobes, let's not even talk about how these lavish clothes, though stunning, could just as easily be classified as medieval instruments of torture. You're already accustomed to the weight of those layers of silk and brocade, which could easily circle around you 3 times. Forget the tummy tuck. When wearing regal attire, it's about squeezing into corsets tighter than a binge-watching marathon after a 12-course feast. Ever tried to breathe while someone is tightly lacing you like a Christmas ham? Well, that's a formative experience that impairs both mobility and laughter. "Right hand to the chest," Lady Catherine commands, "and tilt your head to show humility." You give it your best shot, but, truth be told, you remain torn between feigned respect for lords and the bone-deep yearning for a life outside these gilded gates where you could stretch your limbs without care. A princess's education is meticulously designed to be less about your enjoyment and more about seamlessly navigating a world rife with backhanded compliments, diluted humor, and perhaps a bit of poison in the punch at the two perfect supper parties. Irony abounds in the knowledge you're receiving. Take pride in your role, my child, she instructs, for one day you will be the shining jewel of two kingdoms. Yes, indeed, slightly more valuable than a pot of gold, or maybe a 5-season run of a beloved play. Or perhaps just a pawn in someone else's grand game of chess. What they forget to mention is that your brilliance and splendor will not shield you from criticisms as biting as a particularly nasty sourdough. Remember to always keep your opinions close to your heart, she continues, only to be unleashed upon the world after careful deliberation, akin to a good stew reaching the proper level of simmer. You nearly snicker when you realize that, considering Lady Catherine's relentless droning, simmering may never actually come to fruition. In case you haven't picked up on the theme, dear dreamer, living as a medieval princess is akin to being a well-decorated prisoner in a most magnificent, yet overwhelmingly gilded cage. Yes, you have lovely dresses and a chamber fragrant with lavender, but the walls resonate with the weight of expectation. It's a life that leaves one longing for the curious freedoms of peasants, the freedom to snarl back at intrusive thoughts without fear of reprisal from the royal court. Who knew that the most valuable lesson you could walk away with would be to master the art of nodding politely while ducking the lords and ladies planning their power moves around you? So, after a day spent in this peculiar academy of privilege, you can't help but wonder if your education is merely a precursor to becoming a top-tier noblewoman, trained for events far more important than your own desires. Somewhere in the shadows of Lady Catherine's rhetoric, you long for a wild ride on a trusty steed, the taste of a roasted turkey leg, or even just a hearty belly laugh that doesn't come with a side of misplaced decorum. And as you ponder the absurdity of your royal education, an exercise in careful manipulation disguised as knowledge, you start to think, perhaps the true complexity of life lies not in political alliances, but rather in the whimsical swirl of absurdity that accompanies the noble pursuit of sitting pretty in your very own medieval cage. Medieval Cage. Chapter 11. The Painful Perfection of Language. But today, dear listener, we find ourselves in a decidedly more punishing chapter of your royal education, French pronunciation. Now imagine the delightful sight of a young princess seated with the poised elegance of a swan, gracefully perched on a plush cushion, flanked by stacks of texts in a language that sounds more like someone gargling with pebbles than anything resembling, well, French. What you may have mistaken for a royal salon has morphed into a pit of despair, the very ground zero of pronunciation terror. You clear your throat as Lady Catherine wields her wooden paddle. Yes, you heard it right, paddle. It's not just a decorative piece resting casually on the wall like a forgotten family heirloom. It's the delightful weapon of choice for enforcing linguistic perfection. And let's be honest, It's not like anyone ever volunteered for this course, unless you count the overly optimistic royal families betting on which of their daughters would emerge victorious without ending up with knuckles reminiscent of ripe tomatoes. With every stilted pronunciation, those vowels darting around your tongue like hyperactive squirrels, you feel the sting of Lady Catherine's wrath delivered directly to your tender knuckles. Why does it hurt so much to be introduced to the nuances of bonjour? Because, my dear, this isn't just any old hello. Oh no, it's the kind of greeting that requires an additional layer of finesse, as if you were ordering rare truffles instead of just saying the word for hi. And if you fail to add that little flourish at the end, well, the paddle awaits. An N should be clear, my sweet princess, Lady Catherine declares, with an intensity that suggests she may have spent her childhood training to be a warlord rather than a tutor. It's not bonjour. You most certainly are not a dying cat. It's bonjour. With this, she delivers the paddle unto your fingers, as though it's trying to make sense of frustration, like that absurd American sitcom where characters howl at the television screen in disbelief of the latest plot twist. Except here, the plot twist is your painful bruising. You can't help but ponder whether communication in any era involves this much pain. Is it truly a skill to prance around with words that sound like they've sprouted legs and run away? It's like trying to balance on one foot while chewing gum and reciting Shakespeare, except instead of applause, you receive a sharp reminder of your inadequacies via splinters of frustration. Now, my little dove, try saying s'il vous plaît, Lady Catherine commands, her excitement palpable, like a cat who believes it has cornered the neighborhood pigeon. Could this turn into a terrible tongue twister? You take a breath, ready to unleash your best effort. The words tumble out. S'il vous plaît? For some reason, every vowel is at war with each other, and the play comes out like a cow experiencing an existential crisis. Crack! The paddle strikes again. Oh, how lovely! There's nothing quite like the thrill of a wooden shock therapy session to prepare you for the upcoming ball where you are expected to sweet-talk an array of nobles with nothing but charm and this newly acquired, yet still terribly fragmented, French. As your fingers throb and swell, you start considering possible business opportunities for these educational sessions. Perhaps you could open a faux school of perfectly mispronounced French and charge hefty fees for this unique form of artistic expression, a blend of flailing hands and haphazard vowels that cause just as much confusion as it inspires laughter. With every painful rebuke, you think of your peers, blonde-haired Lady Annabel fumbling through the rhymes of courtly songs, or sullen Lord Percival, who resembles an overconfident tree sapling trying to hold court with. The adults, what every one of them, including yourself, lacks is the freedom to mess up without a syringe of pain following closely behind, like a pesky suitor refusing to take a hint. At this point, the knuckles are practically begging for a break. I'm beginning to think I ought to be crowned the princess of miscommunication, you murmur, flexing your hands to ease the swelling. If having knuckles that look like drumsticks isn't enough, forget about stepping out into the court looking regal. This is more akin to playing a game of charades, a step away from launching a musical. And yet, despite the pain, there's a lesson lurking behind these manic moments of linguistic strife. In this amusingly absurd realm, where wooden paddles reign supreme, you discover something surprising. The passion of communication, even when it comes at the price of some sore digits. Suddenly, it's less about the strict adherence to correctness and more about the sheer joy of trying, the magic of clumsy attempts, and just how relatable it is to your own days, fumbling through misunderstandings at trendy coffee shops. Picture this: you, still a princess, but also a delightful mess of laughter, upside-down phrases, and a comical spelling bee gone dreadfully public. At this rate, you'll become a master at crafting puns that are certainly punderful. Accepting the agony of imperfect communication may just free you from that gilded cage. The opportunity to squeeze joy from every cringe-worthy moment is the ultimate crown jewel of your royal trials. And as the paddle slaps down once more, between the stinging, percussive notes of your failure, you can't help but smile. Because what is life but one long, amusing ballad of missteps and unpredictable laughter? Chapter 12. A Stitch in Time saves what exactly? Ah, dear listener, we slalom gracefully from the perils of painful pronunciation to the perplexities of embroidery. Imagine, if you will, a royal princess, yes, that's you, hunched over an embroidery frame that's managed to wed the elegance of a swan with the back pain of someone who tried yoga while watching a duck-billed platypus documentary. Your fingers are dancing with actual gold thread, hammered thinner than your patience during a particularly dull family dinner. And let's be real, that's saying something. The faint glow of dim light casts a somewhat flattering shadow on your masterpieces, a collection of ornate patterns and knotty tangles that would surely send any self-respecting seamstress into a fit of laughter or horror, depending on their caffeine level. Your eyes strain as you lean in closer, a feat that would require a degree of concentration usually reserved for solving quadratic equations or, heaven forbid, arranging a family photo with everyone smiling at once. Picture this. It's the 13th century, and stitching for a princess isn't merely a pastime. Oh no. It has been elevated to a full-contact sport. It's you, painstakingly creating delicate floral tapestries, while marveled onlookers, including your less than enthusiastic courtiers, cringe in sympathy as they mentally draft their letters of resignation from fashionable embroidery clubs. But really, who wouldn't applaud your sheer determination? After all, creating something beautiful with gear that could double as medieval torture devices is a feat not even the bravest knights would dare undertake. Let's take a moment to appreciate the auditory experience. The gentle, rhythmic pull of the needle through the fabric is accompanied by the delightful sound of your achy back addressing your life choices with a series of increasingly loud pops. And is it just you? Or does that thread seem to be mocking you as it knots itself into a veritable Gordian knot each time you summon the audacity to glance at your sister's latest gown. It's as if the fabric itself senses your struggle and decides to join the rebellion against your aspirations of royal couture. Who knew that a handful of gold-flaked thread could cause such exalted disarray? If you think your last attempt at knitting was complex, try unraveling a series of stitches while pondering whether the woes of medieval princesses even warrant a support group. We might call it Stitching Sufferers Society, an enchanting realm where women gather to sip herbal tea brewed at temperatures that would seem extreme to even the most dedicated coffee aficionado, while bonding over their shared misery of unraveling the perfect stitch. Yet, consolation comes in the form of scent. The sweet aroma of polished wood and subtly antiquated fabric fills the air like a delicate perfume. If only it could drown out the accompanying smell of despair, lingering over each missed stitch. It's as though the essence of your frustrations clings viciously to the threads, turning every regal project into a bizarre aromatherapy session. Ever wondered what lace smells like when you've spent too many hours weaving it? Well, it's a mixture equivalent to a goat's mistimed cologne premiere. Unpleasant at best, utterly tragic at worst. The questions abound, as they tend to do in these peculiar times. Why did every royal dress look like it was designed by a committee of the most eccentric personalities you could gather? Why does every pattern look like it's in a competition for most ensnaring tangle? Was there a hidden manuscript, the art of embroidering confusion, that had gone unexamined in the royal libraries of yore? Or perhaps the greater mystery resides in whether your stitches will reach the kingdom's famed tailor before you end up embroiled in a knot that could take not just hours, but months to untangle, thus providing you a meaningful excuse from all future royal engagements? As you wrestle with the potential for a medieval fashion disaster, let's step back and reflect on the absurdity of your privilege. You, a princess, have every opulent material available, and yet are stuck with needle and thread in a dimly lit room, groaning louder than a knight faced with the armor of a particularly unflattering size. Is this the gilded cage of glory? You are left to contemplate whether the lavish fabrics are more decorative than functional, and whether the anticipation of a ball outweighs the agony of the imperfections in your stitch. A classically trained artist could very well lecture you on the power of the perfect stitch, but that sounds as appealing as a mid-morning paper cut. Instead, you bask in the confusion of the task at hand, and internally debate whether this torturous endeavor is a rite of passage or simply an elaborate excuse to avoid the court's cocktails. Your embroidery frame now stands not just as a pinnacle of artistry, but as an emblem of your struggle, a shimmering island in the sea of your ambitious disdain. So, as you lift your gaze, eyes watering like a freshly sliced onion, abandoning thoughts of glory and seeking a moment of vibrant sanity, remember, every princess, even those bound by gold threads stretching luxuriously into the night, shares the same universal truth. Stitching your dreams may just turn out looking like a mess worthy of the royal jester. And as your tired eyes flicker momentarily towards the tapestry of distractions unfurling around you, just remember, there's no such thing as a perfect stitch. Only a perfect story waiting to be told, Chapter 13 of Tapestries and Tony Stark's Dream Life. Ah, marvelous listener, let's take a brief interlude from the world of glorious embroidery and step over to the narrow window of your medieval chamber, where you can observe a flurry of squires practicing their swordplay in the courtyard below. Picture this: young gentlemen trying valiantly not to trip over their own feet while wielding blades that might as well be made of iron and wine, flailing about like wind-up dolls powered by too many servings of gruel. You can't help but chuckle. As you peer out, a stab of longing sinks deeper than some hastily served stew. Freedom calls you like a persistent goat in spring, bleating with the promise of adventure and, well, let's be honest, battle-ready muscles. But instead of trading your needlework for a sword, you're tethered here, sutured into this gilded cage that is royal life, with more strings attached than a poorly orchestrated puppet show. With a sigh louder than a knight's armor clanking down a stairwell, you shift your focus back to the thread in hand, the shiny golden strand that matches your aspirations better than it matches the drab fabric before you. Ah, yes, the joys of stitching while secretly dreaming of charging into battle like a damsel on a dragon, or at least a well-fed horse. But alas, that's just a daydream. Like imagining your sister's newest gown doesn't look like she borrowed it from the scarecrow. The needle slides through the fabric as if enjoying the very sensation of mocking your aspirations in the way you loathe most intensely. Admittedly, it's quite a skill. The skill of turning lavish dreams into threadbare reality. If only your ambitions could unfold with such ease. It feels almost like trying to clean the house with a tornado, a delightful mess with little payoff. Although, as you sit there contemplating your life choices, you begin to investigate further. What is it exactly that makes a medieval life tick? If you had a while to ponder, you'd probably wonder, what's it like being a princess who can't even throw a good punch at a courtier who gets too handsy with compliments? How many neck ruffles could one wear before they start to feel less regal and more like an unfortunate chicken? And how inconvenient is it that the only excitement you have is hoping the king doesn't sit on your newly embroidered cloth, ruining hours of delicate work? Well, dear listener, as you witness knights clumsily jousting and squires too enthusiastic to look cool, you realize that despite being draped in fabrics worth more than a whole village's yearly taxes, the truth is, life as a medieval princess can often feel curiously like being trapped in a corset. Beautiful, yes, but restrictively snug, with little room to breathe. You momentarily close your eyes, and with a little wiggle of your nose, it feels like you've lighted down in some long-ignored medieval fantasy. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1347, an immensely inconvenient year, much like the last time you tried to bake without realizing you'd run out of flour. Here, Nowhere is safe, not even your imaginatively embroidered gowns. Oh, what a glorious time to accept your fate. Isn't it thrilling? You can hear the swords clink and clang, punctuated by the occasional shout of, "Watch out for that cow!" an expected hazard in any medieval training regimen. Just picture how enchanting your life could have been if you weren't assigned the thankless task of turning linens into art, avoiding marriage proposals from medieval louts who consider throwing a helmet your way a romantic icebreaker. Just think for a moment. You could be galloping alongside your well-trained knights, traversing rolling hills, and laughing maniacally as lances draw close. But no, instead you're here, ensuring that the seams of your garments don't resemble a potato sack, giving you all the thrill of a non-fatal joust with fate. The sunlight trickles through the narrow window, and the splendid aroma of freshly baked bread wafts by, reminding you of simpler, albeit non-sword fighting, joys, like an interminably long-lasting queue in the bakery, or dodging your mother's stern gaze when you forget your daily prayers. Yet, as you engage in such delightful contemplation, you feel the tug of ambition fighting with the golden string twisting around your fingers. One represents the comforts of a princess life, the other the liberation of a knightly escapade. One hand stitching, and the other reaching for glory. So, what fate awaits our dear princess, trapped between her embroidery frame and the realms of valiant adventure? While knights can train all day in the sun, you, armed only with a needle, must navigate an equally tumultuous battlefield filled with obligations and frilly fashions. Sometimes it feels less like destiny and more like a particularly taxing episode of a reality show never auditioned for, expecting more sparkle than you got on your last birthday cake. As you stitch and dream, remind yourself that even if the life you're leading resembles more of a gilded cage than a warrior's glory, at least you're the one wielding the golden thread behind your story. And who knows, one day soon, you might just send a few peasants fluttering your way to rescue you with sword. Because in this twisted, thread-spooled tale of medieval romance and regal routine, everyone deserves a little adventure, even if it arrives with stitch marks. Chapter 14 of Airs and Hiccups in the Great Hall. Hey guys, welcome back to our cozy medieval corner. Tonight, we dive deep into a topic more urgent than your cat's insistence on knocking your glass off the table: the mesmerizing, terrifying world of royal dinners. Imagine the clinking of silverware and the scent of roast peacock wafting in the air, a feast fit for kings and queens, or at least a feudal lord who had a particularly lucrative year. We'll explore what it's like when a friendly dinner chat takes a surprisingly dark turn towards childbirth, a topic as welcome at the table as rotten fish. So, grab your imaginary goblet, make sure you sit up straight, royal etiquette, you know, and prepare for some juicy tales that are sure to tickle your funny bone while easing you into sweet slumber. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment, but only if you actually enjoy this. I promise your digital support will not require a dowry. Now, as we set the stage, dim the lights, cozy up in your favorite chair, lose the fidgeting, and think, what would it feel like to be a medieval princess? To have your life controlled by the ticking clock of production quotas for heirs? Ever wonder what would happen if one of those royal proclamations about childbirth got announced like a surprise birthday party right in the middle of dinner? And how do you respond when the future of your kingdom hinges on how many boys you can produce while still keeping your hair perfectly coiffed? Congratulations! You've just woken up in the year 1355, squished between your well-meaning but overly enthusiastic parents at dinner, focusing on the urgency of reproducing successors. Welcome to the feast. As you take your seat at the long, ornately carved table, where each chair looks more uncomfortable than sitting on a hedgehog, you can't help but notice the grand hall around you. Tapestries depicting valorous knights battling.
Fierce dragons hang haphazardly, looking like they were thrown against the wall by an artist who had just stubbed his toe. The flickering torchlight casts moving shadows that make you wonder if perhaps the tapestry was depicting a very confused version of your family tree. The dinner discussions begin, as they often do, with your father bellowing, "What good is a daughter if she cannot provide strong heirs?" That one hits harder than a malfunctioning crossbow. You can practically hear all the women in the vicinity sighing collectively. Tension swells like a poorly cooked pudding. It seems everyone at the table takes this conversation very seriously. After all, the future of the realm hangs in the balance, along with your personal life, which has all the charm of a damp sponge. The men sit there, lifting their goblets, intent on discussing male heirs, as though they were planning a new hunt for the rarest of beasts. We must acquire 5 lads by next autumn. Speaking of hunting, how is that roast? You can't help but wonder, were they so desperate for boys that they had forgotten to ask if their daughters wanted to broker a deal with the prince of a neighboring kingdom? Or would you have to present your achievements on a scroll, like qualified to bear heirs, advanced proficiency in needlework, and a record time for covering up familial scuffles at court? As the discussion continues, your heart bleeds for the countless women who didn't get the chance to argue their rights, perishing in childbirth. "Oh yes," they say nonchalantly, "it's just part of life, like wearing tights or eating gruel." The grim statistics flow like wine, and it's apparent that childbirth for royal ladies is akin to battling a particularly cranky dragon. You ponder this horrible fate while picking at a dish that's been garnished to look like a Ewok in a fancy dress. Couldn't you request a dragon-slaying mission instead? At least that sounds like it. Could end with glory, rather than some unfortunate incident involving an unwieldy midwife and too many herbal remedies. And you thought the king's court was chaotic during a new moon. Everyone around the table has an opinion, of course, especially your Aunt Hilda, who seems to believe that if you scream, "Air!" loudly enough, the heavens will simply oblige. "Just remember," she booms, plopping some oddly cooked duck onto your plate, "a son will bring power. Let the spirit of the dragon guide you." Sure, Aunt Hilda,
If only everything was as simple as ordering an extra serving of pudding. Sighing, you feel trapped between dwarfing expectations and a rumbling belly. You wonder if this is what medieval royalty truly amounts to. Clinking goblets, forced conversations about male offspring, and trying not to gag on gravy that tastes like regret. It's delightful, like a feast where the sword comes with the meal instead of dessert. Meanwhile, your mother, an unyielding force of nature, leans over to remind you of your duty. Remember, dear, the kingdom relies on you, and don't forget to look lovely while doing it. What's next? A magazine feature titled Top 10 Ways to Look Radiant While Enforcing a Patriarchal Lineage? So here you are, amidst the chatter of claimants and bread rolls flying like arrows across a battlefield, sipping from a goblet as anxiety bubbles within. One moment they're deliberating over what you must do to secure the future. The next, they're discussing last week's turkey hunt as though it's an exciting plot twist in a dull novel. Ah, life in the Great Hall. A curious mix of royal obligations, elaborate dinners, and the general expectation that you should somehow harness the ability to change the course of history while avoiding food poisoning from the exotic dishes being paraded before you. Welcome to your gilded cage. You can't make this up. Chapter 15. Packing Our Problems in Heavy Chests. Hey guys, welcome back to our lovely medieval escapade. Tonight, we embark on a journey more exciting than finding an extra slice of pie hidden in the back of the fridge. The harrowing preparations for a medieval princess's escape to France. Imagine, if you will, a bustling castle room filled with the melodious sounds of clanking wooden chests, each one heavier than the emotional baggage of a court jester after Valentine's Day. You're about to dive into a delightful concoction of gilded cages, elaborate coach rides, and the gripping tales of a life paved with plush cushions and inexplicable expectations. So, kick back, relax, and before we get started, let's adjust our imaginary crowns like we're preparing for an important outdoor event. A tournament, perhaps, where the victor wins a lifetime supply of gruel. And don't forget, if you enjoyed tonight's journey, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and drop a comment. But only if you actually enjoy this. Because let's be real, we're not handing out dowries for compliments. Now, get comfortable and let your mind wander to the challenging concerns of a medieval princess. Ever wonder how one continues to look regal while attempting to stuff assorted gowns and jingly bling into something resembling a suitcase? Is there a medieval equivalent of a packing app that tells you if you've overpacked or if your gown selection could star in a fashion emergency? What's it like to say a goodbye that feels a bit more permanent than leaving a party after you realize you accidentally drank the last of the spiced mead? Congratulations! You've just awakened in the year 1377, on the brink of an adventure filled with royal oddities and unwritten rules. Just as you start packing your life into the kind of wooden chests better suited for keeping secret treasures, or possibly a very confused alligator. As you swing open that sturdy chest, the smell of old wood and dusty fabric fills your nostrils. The sunlight filtering through the stone windows looks suspiciously like something used to highlight a bad painting, but it will have to do. Your heart races in anticipation as you sift through gowns that look as if they were inspired by the world's most opulent circus act. Velvet? Check. Embroidery? Double check. A hint of musty odor from being stuffed away for centuries? Oh, just perfect. Your mother flits around the room like a particularly anxious bee, reminding you that everything you take represents an entire lineage of women who navigated their own packs of expectations, often while balancing a basket of eggs on their heads. She hands you a gold ring, glittering with the silent wisdom of all the grandmas before you, like a family heirloom with more backstory than a soap opera character. Just a tiny piece of home to carry into the uncertain future, where hopes hang like an awkwardly draped tapestry that hasn't seen a good dusting since.
Bohemia was just a refreshing drink.
"Don't forget your sewing kit," she announces, and you can't help but wonder, with all the excitement of courtly life potentially introducing you to charms and chandeliers, how often will you actually have to fix a hem? Maybe you'll be traipsing across foreign lands, and some nobleman will suddenly demand a patch, because why not? Rotting fabrics are all the rage, darling. As you consider the daunting task ahead of cramming frilly fabrics alongside practical shoes, the kind you hope won't blister your feet after a day of navigating castle corridors, you can't help but think about your impending future. Sure, you'll be shipped off to a shiny new kingdom, but what is that really like? Perhaps it's similar to moving into your friend's house after they've gone off the deep end and casually replaced a no shoes rule with a hop on one foot while reciting Shakespeare entry requirement. You heave another chest open, staring longingly at your collection of scrolls and books, titles full of practical wisdom that will probably not help you one bit. How to host a royal dinner without losing your sanity. And so you've become a princess. Dealing with Expectations 101 seem particularly relevant, yet utterly useless in your current packing crisis. Amidst all the chaos, let's not forget the inevitable mounds of linens. Who knew that packing would feel like preparing for an extended vacation where every item you own can either bring joy or impose grave embarrassment in the court of fashion? You're here for practical essentials, yet you're somehow also wondering if glittering dresses or comfortable peasant trousers could serve as, say, a card game distraction during dull evenings. But we haven't even touched on the most pressing dilemma: how to fit your crown while keeping your self-respect intact. Perhaps it goes next to the spices, those psychological boosters that will, at least, remind you that you brought something exotic along, even if it's just the powdered form of a pepper. Ah, yes, the strange world of packing. It's a delicate dance between practicality and passion, all played out while trying not to monstrous blunders that could lead to more awkward farewells than a soggy biscuit at a tea party. You imagine yourself joyously sitting in a sumptuously decorated carriage, making small talk with the crowd of would-be suitors, and then suddenly realizing that you forgot, again, your extra pair of undergarments. Let's take a moment to reflect, shall we? When you're dressed to the nines, on your way to secure your royal future, it's all fun and games until someone announces, "Oops, the castle is under siege." You laugh, even if it's a nervous laughter, because really, what else can you do in life but pack with purpose and hope that whatever unfolds next has a spark of delight hiding among the chaos. So, now that you've sealed up those chests, metaphorically and literally, suit yourself for the journey ahead, dear princess. Your new life awaits, filled with adventures and firmly tied expectations. As long as you're mentally prepared to look fabulous, doing absolutely nothing most of the time. Unless, of course, you need to bake a pie. Stay tuned as we unfold the next chapter of our delightful soiree into your medieval life. A journey more amazing than realizing you've been using a soup ladle instead of a striking spoon. Sleep tight and join me as we continue unraveling the absurdities of being a royal in such an unconventional world. Chapter 16. Wave-washed dreams and groomed nightmares. Hey guys, welcome back to our whimsical ride through the medieval ages, where life can feel more turbulent than a jester bouncing on a pogo stick while juggling onions. Tonight, we find ourselves aboard a tiny ship braving the English Channel, bound for grand adventures. Assuming you can survive the choppy waters and your impending marriage to a stranger who might think a half-eaten turnip is the height of culinary delight. Now, as we drift into this nautical nightmare, let's picture the scene, shall we? The salty spray of the sea hits your face like an enthusiastic aunt who just found out you're finally of marrying age. Too invigorating and somewhat terrifying. Imagine being tossed about on a ship that seems to have stolen its design principles from a particularly rebellious potato. You look around and wonder, is this trip meant to fill your heart with hope, or regale you with stories of how not to die during maritime travel? Spoiler alert, it's definitely the latter. So, as you brace yourself against the railings, probably constructed by the lowest bidder in the shipbuilding competition, you can't help but ponder the profound questions of your royal existence. Ever wonder if the sea is like life, unpredictable, and filled with the occasional dread-induced sinking feeling? Or perhaps you're beginning to suspect that this whole adventure is just one long waiting room to meet the man who, let's be honest, could rival a poorly cooked pigeon when it comes to qualities you're looking for in a husband. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1377, clutching your chest while praying you didn't inadvertently sign up for a one-way ticket into the waves. The ship sways beneath you, its creaking wood sounding suspiciously like the groans of a passing banshee who missed her deadline. You might even hear the crew members swapping tales more absurd than scenes from a soap opera. I heard the last lady off this ship married a cowherd and spent her days defending the honor of her prized cheese wheel. Let's discuss your fellow voyagers. They're about as comforting as a goblin at midnight. There's a gruff sailor yelling incomprehensible orders in what could only be described as a language that evolved from barking at ducks. And there's a merchant hiccuping over his wares, swaying with the ship like a pendulum that's run out of time. You start to wonder if you'll have to ask for directions once you reach France, or if they'll just hand you a map made of folded sacrificial offerings from confused locals. Now, back to your own feelings. Thrust into a new life and bound for a wedding with a stranger, your heart is racing faster than a hare in a foot race with a particularly enthusiastic snail. You left the comforts of your castle, those sumptuous feather beds and pastries so delicate they practically melted at the mere thought of your impending disaster. and traded it all for this creaky hunk of wood bobbing around the English Channel. Let's face it, the only thing more confusing than maritime navigation is trying to figure out how to breathe while contemplating your marital prospects. And have we talked about the food yet? You're likely subsisting on a diet of ship biscuits, those brick-like cakes that could double as weapons during surprise pirate raids. The only thing worse? The suspicious fish stew made from whatever the sailors could coax from the depths of the ocean that morning, probably while yelling motivational slogans about avoiding food poisoning. Who knew the culinary art firmly revolved around keeping everyone alive while steering clear of food that might jump off your plate and swim back home? Meanwhile, the waves lurch beneath you, creating the illusion that your stomach is auditioning for a role in a particularly tragic love story. Every pitch sends your soul flying higher than a falcon trying to escape the delivery of a very bad marriage proposal. Why, oh why, you muse quietly, didn't I spend more time following the knitting lessons instead of thinking about thrones? Perhaps one day you'll sit in a posh castle, reflecting on how romantic adventure can cost you lunch, dignity, or possibly even your sense of balance. As the seagulls squawk wildly above, potentially weighing in on who you might marry next, you can't help but imagine your new life across the channel. A castle filled with eccentric nobles, lavish feasts, more gowns than a textile warehouse, and yet another influx of indignities courtesy of societal expectations. Surely a few of those dresses could be fitted with flotation devices for your upcoming adventures, especially if they continue rocking your world in the style of, say, a wobbly tavern table. As you contemplate the chaos of it all, and as a particularly oblivious wave splashes cold seawater on your face, prompting echoes of the seas are complementing your complexion, you can't help but chuckle. You may have been thrust into the eye of a proverbial storm, but isn't that just the nature of life? Sometimes you find yourself on a roller coaster designed by no one but mischievous spirits, and you learn to laugh until you're gasping for air. So, dear listener, let the rolling waves of your future wash over your dreams tonight. If you're called to sail the seas of uncertainty, know that every lurch and sway is a necessary dance, fueled by hope and a touch of absurdity. You may yet find out the stranger who awaits, and perhaps he'll surprise you, like discovering a hunk of honey cake when you least expect it. Stay tuned, for next we shall delve deeper into the unsettling joys of castle life, where dining etiquette is as complicated as knotting your shoelaces with your eyes closed, and inevitably, some unsuspecting fool will take their place at the wrong table, all while the princess watches with amusement. Sweet slumbers as you dream of resilient tides and unexpected marriages. Chapter 17. The Gilded Cage of Courtly Etiquette. Hey guys, welcome back to our little jaunt through the wonders and absurdities of medieval life, like discovering that your life's work has been devoted to knitting jumpers for a bunch of intransigent goats. Tonight, we dive into the splendid chaos of being a medieval princess caught between cold palace walls and colder courtiers, where even your own accent can feel like a stumbling block larger than the drawbridge. Now, dim those lights,
Grab whatever comfort items you can, blankets, stuffed animals, extra snacks, you know the drill, and settle in for a tale where sharp tongues cut deeper than a knight's sword, and every misstep could send you tumbling into a social abyss darker than your post-holiday credit card statement. Why, oh why, did you think being royalty meant no more awkward family dinners? Picture this. You've just woken up in France in the year 1377, the light gently illuminating your new surroundings. Your
chamber, albeit lavish, with tapestries depicting heroic battles, feels more claustrophobic than a henhouse filled with roosters battling for the last grain of sorghum. And let's not forget your new neighbors, the French courtiers, all with their refined accents and judging gazes. You can almost hear the whispers floating through the air, dripping with contempt. Did she really think she could wear that color? What were you expecting? You've traded your cozy English castle, where fancy dress meant donning a gown that required at least 3 farmhands to transport, for a French court where the fashion stakes are higher than a jester on a tightrope. You can hear the courtiers now, a chorus of snide whispers discussing your English accent as if it's the latest local vegetable hybrid. Bland peasants' talk, perhaps? They might sneer as they curtsy with overly practiced poise. I mean, is it really a competition over who can sip tea the most elegantly while wearing 6 layers of silk? Let's talk about your entrance into this social minefield. You glide into the chamber as gracefully as a giraffe on roller skates, out of your comfort zone and into the judgmental eyes of ladies and lords who have made an art form out of subtle snickers and exaggerated eyebrow raises. The weight of expectation is heavier than one of those strange helmets the knights parade around in, designed less for protection and more for ornamental confusion. But here's the kicker. One little misstep, an accidentally incorrect curtsy, or a poorly timed bonjour, and suddenly you're parading not as the lovely English princess, but as the court fool. Ever had a single meal that felt like a cooking competition, where your inadequate soufflé causes a royal grumble? You sit at the head table, contemplating the culinary philosophies of the locals, while also wondering how far the backlash from an undercooked tart could land you in the hearts of your subject. It's like navigating a 3-dimensional chess game where the pieces have faces and they are all judging your every move. You know, like trying to find common ground with your grandparents at a family reunion where the only conversation topic is who's winning at bingo. If only you had more charm or learning to dazzle them. Maybe a glittering smile or two to share like candy at a children's party. Alas, your best move may simply be to nod and smile, hoping nobody wants to engage you on what you think about, say, the latest hollandaise sauce fiasco. As you settle into your seat, the air is heavy, infused with the aroma of roasted meats and the bated breaths of courtiers fixating on every morsel. The clang of goblets echoes melodically like a symphony of desperate approval as you cautiously sip from a goblet. What refreshing concoction could this be? Oh yes, only the finest wine, or, as they might consider it, a simple grape juice concoction elevated to royal status through
sheer
wishful thinking. So now we reach the crux of your predicament. It's not just social graces you must master, but a relentless game of pretend positivity. Isn't Sir Pierre an excellent Jabberwock, you think? While recalling your cousin's parakeet, who actually chirped smarter things. Who knew that merely existing in this gilded cage could feel more perilous than fishing in a piranha-infested river? With every royal banquet, where the main menu item shifts between charitable rabbit and undercooked llama, you wade through an undercurrent of drama deeper than any moat. Feelings of inadequacy creep in faster than an undercooked pie crust. How could you ever rise to meet such expectations when it feels like the world is staging a talent show for which you didn't even receive an audition notice? And despite all this keen observation, you muster the courage to half-heartedly engage in political chit-chat. So, what do you think of the new bridge construction? Might ask casually, knowing full well that half the court will roll their eyes and another faction will launch a war of words about which architect deserves the title of greatest of all time. Because in courtly circles, everything is a matter of life, death, and likely a dash of scandal. But there you are, standing valiantly in the eye of the storm, at a banquet where more courtiers have opinions than cheese selections. And as a noble passes you a dried fig, because what sounds better next to your tranquil musings than a dried fruit that likely went out of style 15 gossip newsletters ago? You can't help but think, maybe it's all just a ruse, a frothy blend of overcooked ambitions served on a platter of unending societal pressure. Oh, the joys, the laughter, and the chaotic memories waiting to emerge from your life as you stroll through the golden halls of the French court, where a single smile can launch an alliance, or a particularly biting comment can shift opinions faster than the wind changes direction. Welcome to the exquisite trauma of being a medieval princess. Proof that sometimes nobility feels a lot more like being the last slice of bread at a feast. Chapter 18. The Formal Meeting with Philip, son of the king. Ah, sprite of adventure and high spirals of diplomatic expectation, let's wade through this royal charade together. You're not just a medieval princess, beautifully trapped in a tapestry of expectations. You're also about to embark on your first formal meeting with a rather significant figure, the charmingly dutiful Philip, son of the French king. Look out, world. The stage is set for awkward pleasantries and stately maneuvering that make playing charades with bats look like a day at the carnival. Let's envision it, the grand hall thrumming with excitement, and you're about to approach a man weighed down by duty like a scribe burdened with an entire library of parchment. As you walk in, you feel as though 1,000 eyes are glued to you, much like a cat fixated on the beam of a laser pointer, only slightly less adorable and with far more tension. To your right, the courtiers are lined up like reluctant breakfast sausages on a serving platter, each ready to gossip as fervently as a hive of bees. Will he bow? Will he curtsy?
Or will he accidentally knock over a candlestick and memorialize this interaction in courtly infamy? You straighten your spine, practicing the nuanced art of appearing regal mixed with just the right dash of, "Please don't judge my noble lineage. They did their best." You've rehearsed your lines like a wannabe Shakespearean actor at an open mic night. "Your Highness, 'tis a pleasure to be in your most illustrious presence." It sounds just fine in your head until you realize you've accidentally quoted your favorite quiche recipe instead. The hall crackles with the electricity of anticipation, nearly as palpable as that slight discomfort in your stomach caused by last night's overly rich stew. Your eyes lock onto Philip. He stands there, crammed into a fine doublet that looks like it's been stuffed with extra confidence and fluffy ambition. While he appears every bit the dutiful son, you can't help but think he bears a closer resemblance to a roasted turkey on display, a delightful surface full of promising potential, held together with enough clasped embroidery to make a tailor weep. And as the formalities unfold like the pages of a very dull book, time drags on in a rhythm reminiscent of a snail doing the cha-cha. You offer a hesitant curtsy, a curtsy your grandmother once made you practice while in between knitting herself yet another collection of cat sweaters. Predictably, there's a collective gasp from the onlookers. They enjoy drama as much as a reality TV audience swooning over the revelation of yet another secret admirer. "Ah, milady," he returns, his voice steady like an old windmill creaking against a gust. "It is most agreeable to finally meet you." And what a meet it is! Formality thick enough to spread on toast. Why is it always like this? As you continue the delicate dance of conversation, it feels less like a spirited exchange and more like you're performing a duet with a rather off-key lute. "So, do you come here often?" you muster, envisioning the exit signs flashing like a beacon of hope. He looks at you through eyes that seem to wear the same look as a knight, contemplating whether to charge into battle or perhaps take a nice nap instead. "Oh yes, I often pop in for courtly banter and the occasional debate on the best cheese to pair with one's insults," he replies, gesturing grandly with an inflection that suggests he's practiced this moment more times than either of you would care to count. If only this were like speed dating, where someone would slip you a note saying, "Maybe try interpreting this in a medieval rap." But, alas, you're tethered to this gilded cage of banter. Instead of a much-needed exit, you launch into a conversation about the king's latest farming policies, as if they were, indeed, the hottest gossip of the day. His earnest face absorbs every word with all the excitement of a goldfish contemplating the meaning of life while circling its bowl. As the minutes tick by, you both labor through a symphony of polite exchanges, punctuated by the distant sound of someone quite literally tripping over their own sense of decorum. And here is where the absurd beauty lays. Each time one of you says something slightly less than charmed, the other raises an eyebrow, the courtly version of a "bless your heart." After an eternity of the kind of chat that seems to fuel the very essence of boredom,
You manage to exchange a few more words, punctuated by touches of pleasantries, each remark feeling as though it's been sifted through a sieve of aristocratic expectation. You wonder how this meeting, devoid of romance or camaraderie, feels so very much like a budget discussing parchment expenditures, essentially necessary, terribly dull, and best forgotten 2 steps past the threshold. But within this dullness lies an unexpected nugget, the realization that behind those princely veils of decorum might just lie 2 souls tethered by duty and expectation. Perhaps Philip was simply a man, nay, a charming being, with as much trepidation as you in this game of noble life. It's like discovering a secret stash of candy under a floorboard, unexpectedly sweet, yet you can't help but wonder what other surprises await. As your formal meeting draws to a close, you can't shake the feeling that, while the initial connection was as dry as a week-old crust of bread, there just might be potential that lies hidden like a rogue piece of cheese in a castle pantry, waiting for someone brave enough to discover their secret. After all, duty is a rather peculiar dance, but perhaps with time and missteps, it could uncover an unexpected harmony between 2 hearts accustomed to the demands of the crown. In this gilded cage of duties, you steal one last glance at Philip, thinking that maybe, just maybe, a partnership built on paper could transform into something as deliciously complex as a pie, where each filling is a new flavor of destiny. Now, dear listener, as you drift off to sleep, just remember that even in the world of formalities, the delight of the unexpected lurks just around the corner, much like that slice of leftover pie hiding at the very back of your fridge. And who knows, maybe tomorrow's adventures might lead to laughter born of duty, where the absurdity of life reigns supreme. Chapter 19. A Walk Through the Gilded Cage. Ah, welcome to the dazzling reality of a medieval palace, where life resembles an elegant ballet performed on a stage of awkwardness. The courtyard is vast, adorned with roses and meticulously trimmed hedges, all held hostage by a flock of chirping sparrows who are, let's face it, the real royalty here. You find yourself amidst glistening chandeliers, as dramatic as a Shakespearean soliloquy, where every move you make is scrutinized more closely than the latest scandal on a tabloid cover. The corridors echo with the whispers and rustles of the ladies-in-waiting, each one an expert in the delicate art of eavesdropping, while simultaneously executing a flawless impression of a spider weaving intricate webs of small talk that ensnare anyone daring enough to venture too close. Just imagine it, their eyes darting between you and the marvelous ornate tapestries draped on the walls like oversized postcards proclaiming, "Look, we are sophisticated. We have dragons and knightly quests." It's as if you've stepped into a world where the air is perfumed with lavender and gossip, an intoxicating blend we call anxiety. Each movement you make sends ripples of judgment throughout the shimmering court, and with every breath, the expectation weighs down like an overly elaborate hat that, let's be honest, does not do your hair any favors. Hide your thoughts, dear listener. Gathering the courage to express your opinions is akin to setting off fireworks in a library. Instead, you develop an impressive proficiency in the noble art of smiling while your mind takes a civil vacation, sipping herbal tea in the comforting silence of your inner sanctum. You learn to mask your true feelings behind a veneer of royal composure, where the stakes are higher than a juggler on stilts. No tumbles allowed. Now, let's entertain the absurdity. What's worse than dealing with a chatty neighbor who can't seem to grasp the concept of social cues? Picture a gaggle of royal ladies hinting that perhaps your doublet is not quite setting the right tone. For breakfast, thank you very much. The rumor mill churns faster than peasants dash for the last loaf of bread. Every day is an elaborate performance as you balance grace on a tightrope stretched taut across a deep chasm of opinionated whispers. For every step, there's a prepared response that tumbles from your lips like rehearsed lines from a rather dull play. The food is exquisite, but dining becomes yet another challenge, a feast where you're more likely to choke on your own misaligned cutlery than savor a well-prepared pheasant. Forks? Haha, no. If you're lucky, a spoon. A spoon that seems more decorative than functional. Not that you could ever complain. Your noble position rests upon the delicate conviction that saying something even remotely critical about the cuisine would be blasphemy. Instead, you smile blandly, wishing for the secret ingredient of honesty, or at least a hidden roll in your sleeves. You plod through breakfast banter that makes small talk at a dentist's waiting room feel positively exhilarating. Ah, Lady Margot, your lacework is exquisite. Did you use whatever swatches are left from curtains, or is this the latest trend? The sparkling laughter would be delightful if you could just unearth a serious moment beneath those layers of politeness. It turns out, unearthing things in a dress as heavy as a lead balloon is a serious workout. And how does one find solace amidst this chaos? You rediscover the simple pleasures of silence, the kind only found tucked away in a dusty, forgotten corner of the library, where ancient tomes offer more companionship than the prying eyes of the court. The candlesticks flicker gently as you settle down to read about grand escapades. Anything is preferable to being the subject of another "Who Wore It Best?" the Royal Edition assessment. As the sun begins to set, casting shadows like overzealous guards in the corridors, you catch a glimpse of freedom. Yes, that elusive concept. It's a short walk to the stables where the horses wait, more visceral than any courtly affair. All those noble deeds fall away as you search for a loyal steed. It's almost like choosing a Netflix show, but with less drama and significantly more hay. The stable smells strangely reassuring, a contrast to the perfumed kingdom that can often feel like a fancy potpourri of deception. And while you might yearn to command your steed like a mythical Amazon, reality dictates that your retinue prefers you remain merely a princess who loves to ride. So, off you go, secretly imagining you're leading a cavalry charge against the couch potato invasion of disgruntled subjects lurking in the courtyard. The horses step daintily, each hoof echoing the dreams you hold close, far away from the gilded cage of etiquette and decorum. As you navigate this intricate dance of palace life, ever mindful of eyes upon you, it's easy to misplace your individuality in the elaborate tapestry of royal expectations. But something remarkable happens. You learn the art of masquerading, weaving your own silken threads between the strictures laid out for you, and discovering that you can be both regal and delightfully chaotic. So let that sink in as you drift into a slumber. Between the boundless constraints of a gilded cage and the freedom of the heart lies the mystery of human humor, ever robust, ever endearing. Remember, even in complexity, there exists the joy of laughter, where the absurd is seamlessly woven into the fabric of life. And like that pie hiding at the back of the fridge, sometimes the best surprises come when you least expect them, lurking just around the corner. Now, about to plunge into your dreams, remember, the next time royal life feels overwhelming, think of the absurdity wrapped in every unwieldy expectation. It's just a jest, and the
Absurdity of it all keeps the world turning gently forward. Sweet dreams, O fearless princess of ludicrous adventures. Ludicrous adventure. Chapter 20. The Plague of Royal Existential Crisis.
Hey guys, welcome to another escapade in the medieval amusement park, where every day offers something colder than your ex's heart. Life as a medieval princess. Tonight, we'll dive into the charming chaos of a court brimming with potential illness. Yes, my dear dreamers, grab your invisible swords and don your quilted armor, because we're about to discover why the phrase, "take care of yourself," evokes far more than your average stay hydrated campaign. Spoiler, it's a perilous landscape of sneezes and questionable stew. Now, before we roll away on this rickety Victorian merry-go-round of disease and dismay, do me a solid. Like and subscribe to this channel, but only if we do a good job entertaining you. Otherwise, feel free to take your unsolicited advice back to the medieval marketing team. And as always, dim the lights, put on that fan to replicate the gentle breezes of plague-free times, and prepare your body, mind, for a cozy leap into the past. Picture yourself navigating the regal landscape where silk gowns and embroidered tunics are swathed in the subtly intoxicating musk of, well, let's say, life's little accidents. Ever pondered whether your social calendar could include an acute case of the pox? Or worried your latest meeting of noble ladies might end with a surprise visit from the Grim Reaper? It's the ultimate social faux pas. Oh dear, you were just getting over that fever? Well, let's send you a nice embroidered note while you're stuck in bed. Or worse. Congratulations! You've just awoken in the year 1305, where the very air seems to whisper, "Beware the soup." Yes, it's a vibrant world brimming with possibility and pestilence. But first, let's talk about the ever-looming specter of illness that haunts your every courtly endeavor. The Grand Hall, with its towering ceilings and lavish tapestries, feels lively enough, until you catch a whiff of last week's leftover fish stew. Kind of like that one friend who insists on a dinner party theme of a feast for the senses. Except in this case, The senses are all screaming, "What in the name of King Arthur's ghost is that?" Ah yes, the court's version of Netflix. A parade of illnesses you didn't even know existed. Your esteemed friends and bold rivals tumble into a feverish pile like overripe apples at a less than philanthropic harvest festival, all thanks to the charming state of hygiene that would have made even a muckraking pig blush. It's almost as amusing as it is tragic. Imagine a world where you can decipher whether your neighbor's cough is from a common cold or the dreaded "why are my insides trying to escape" syndrome. Speaking of which, meet your dear friends, Lady Helena and Sir Percival, who are currently locked in a life-or-death battle. One has developed a cough intriguingly reminiscent of a wise old owl, while the other is impeccably pale, like they've just starred in a ghostly rendition of Cinderella that everyone wished would end. You sit at a safe distance, meticulously calculating which malaise is worth catching in exchange for your courtly reputation. Life in the medieval court boils down to that eternal question: is my status enough to keep me from catching the same creeping malaise that felled the whole salad of noble folk last castle party? Spoiler alert, it's no. Just ask the poor Duke, whose night of merriment ended with something fierce. He swore his last meal included lead from the goblet. Now, on to your daily routines amidst the fear of festering infections. When it comes time to eat, you and the other ladies-in-waiting gather round a table laid out with food that has gone from gourmet to "I hope this stays down." Huddled between catching the latest gossip about the Lord and awaiting your turn to taste the fish surprise. Spoiler, it's mostly just surprise. How's a girl supposed to navigate this culinary hellscape? Excuse me, did you say bread? My favorite, next to, everything not swimming in a questionable sauce. You're armed with the knowledge that your plate of food is less elegant dining and more a crash course in culinary roulette. One sip from the soup and it's clearer than a reality TV finale. Someone's about to go down. It's like thinking you're being treated to a lavish spa day, only to find out it's just an hour in a medieval bathhouse where the aroma is more foot than flower. Surprise! All around you, gloved hands delicately raise goblets full of whatever concoction was deemed palatable that day. Scandals swirl. Did you hear Lady Margaret caught the mumps just after attending an elaborate dinner? Yes, those whispers flutter through the air like startled bats in a belfry, a reminder that your royal status, while splendid, is no protective barrier against an epidemic. At every turn, life constantly reminds you, dear listener, that while wearing a crown may grant you the appearance of authority, your body unfortunately still operates under the laws of medieval biology. Fate is a joker, and your days are punctuated by shallow breaths and awkward social encounters, like asking someone if they're feeling under the weather, only to discover they're actually under the mound of dirt it's inevitable they'll soon occupy. But fear not. As you lay awake, dreaming of escaping the shackles of this house of germs, remember, even amidst the swirling chaos of death and disease, humor remains your most loyal companion. After all, life in the medieval court is nothing if not an amusing absurdity wrapped in lace. So take a deep breath, just not too deeply as we've established, and let the laughter carry you off to sleep, sweet dreamer of yesteryear. Chapter 21. The Gilded Cage of Royal Promises. Hey guys, welcome back to our medieval wonderland, where today we dive into something even more prized than a double chocolate muffin, the bittersweet experience of being a medieval princess. Yes, you heard that right. Prepare yourselves for a journey colder than a knight's heart after a nasty breakup. It's time to discover why life as a princess is not just tiaras and royal ballrooms, but a complex knitting of knots that had put even the most tangled Christmas lights to shame. Before we embark on this perilous adventure through the labyrinth of privilege and responsibility, do me a solid. If you enjoy our journey today, like and subscribe. But hey, only if this experience tickles your funny bone and helps you drift off into a happy slumber. Otherwise, take that unsolicited advice and send it back to the treacherous counsel of court jesters. So, dim those lights, turn on a fan, and fluff up that pillow. The medieval dreams await. You ever pondered what it's like to spend your days being primped, dressed, and paraded about like an ornate centerpiece at a royal banquet? Or have you ever thought about what really goes on behind those high castle walls, where sweet promises of luxury mask a mosaic of oppression that would leave even the most patient peasant shaking their head? Imagine moats filled with piranhas, but instead of fish, it's expectations lurking beneath the surface. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1312, the year the only thing more suffocating than your corset is the weight of your royal duties. Welcome to the Gilded Cage of Princessdom, a picturesque prison where your destiny is scripted in ink as thick as the castle walls. Let's talk about childbirth, shall we? And yes, I mean the momentous occasion of bringing the future king into the realm. You're nestled in lavish silks, writhing in agony. It's a scene more dramatic than an opera staged in an underground cavern. Life has turned on you like a bird on a cat, and you're preparing to deliver your firstborn, Henri, who, let's be honest, would probably make an unnecessary fuss the same way a kitten knocks over a glass of wine. With every contraction, echoes of history, complete with advice from long-gone midwives, thunder through your mind. Breathe, like you're blowing out the candles on a birthday cake. Except here's the kicker. That lack of cake. Yeah, that's just the harsh reality of being a princess. Hand me a crown and give me the cake. Am I right? The screaming fills the room with a cacophony of whispers surrounding you. Did you know that giving birth in the medieval era was like hosting a party where the guest list is filled with loved ones, enemies, and a few very confused peasants peeking in the window? Who knew survival of the fittest also extended to birthing chambers? After what feels like an eternity, which I can only imagine feels like choosing a movie to watch on a Friday night, you finally hear that cherished wail of your son. Ah, Henri, you've secured your place in the history of the realm, and while the relief washes over you, so does that inescapable realization. Your duties have just doubled. Congratulations! You can now anxiously await the arrival of political alliances and familial expectations, which is almost like receiving a beautiful gift from your great-aunt Edna, wrapped in a lifetime's worth of responsibilities. You lay back, drenched in a mix of sweat and relief, pondering your newfound status. Have I thrown open the floodgates of responsibility, only to watch my dreams float downstream? You might just have a new hobby, worrying about your son's future, or lack thereof, because heaven and the court only know how many men will line up like eager geese to wed a future king. And let's chat about what your recovery looks like. Picture an ornate chamber filled with flowers, pots of honey, and, oh yes, a delightful assortment of the past's most delicate remedies. It's like a 14th century version of a wellness retreat, only instead of yoga poses, you're left grappling with the medieval methods of healthcare. Forget about herbal tea. This is the time where your refreshments might include a concoction so foul it defies all modern imagination. Have you ever tasted something that redefines what it means to be infused? As the days pass, you find that your new title comes with more scrolls than a scribe's workshop. Writers are tasked with detailing the events of your life as though they were immortalizing some grand epic, while you're just trying to figure out which end of the spoon goes in your mouth. Ah yes, courtship has never been this comedically convoluted, you muse, holding a piece of parchment, while the real battles lie in remembering proper manners, even more so than deciding whether to have stew or gruel for dinner. Ah, but humor isn't lost in the perfection of your plight. Even amidst the intricate embroidery of court life, you can't help but let out a snicker or two. Who knew being a medieval princess would feel like juggling while riding a unicycle on a tightrope above a pit of rabid squirrels? So, as you nest into your pillows, clinging to the hope that tomorrow will come with less pressure and perhaps a piece of cake, remember that wearing a crown may earn you royal treatment, but it does little to protect you from being buried under a mountain of royal expectation. Being a princess is a gilded cage, dear dreamers, and yet it is also an opportunity to find humor in the absurdity, a treasure worth waking up for each day, even if some days it feels more like carpe noctem than carpe diem. So let that laughter mend the seams of your solemnity as you drift off into the night, and inevitably the deliverance of sleep. Chapter 22. The Silent Song of the Gilded Hall. Hey guys, welcome back to our channel where the medieval revelry doesn't just stop at candlelit dinners. Today we're plunging into the emotionally rich, yet almost comically absurd experience of a medieval princess. Just imagine life so lavish it makes a luxury yacht seem like a dingy rowboat, but with all the freedom of a very well-fed house cat, unwilling to venture outside. Prepare yourselves for a tale that's as paradoxical as your phone's battery life before you find a charger. Now you might be asking yourself, what's it like to wear a crown that's so heavy you could probably bench press a small donkey? Or, is managing a court of nobles really different from managing family dinner conversations, where everyone has opinions, no one agrees, and the closest thing to a mediator is a court jester? Or maybe you've wondered, is "how do I get out of this" the royal catchphrase of our long-lost medieval ancestors? Fear not, dear friends. We'll unwrap these grievous curiosities like it's Christmas morning, with the hopes that you don't end up with a lump of coal. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1354, a year when the only thing more tangled than your hair after a night's sleep is your complicated relationship with tradition and duty. Welcome to the Gilded Halls, a world that glitters as bright as a dragon's hoard, yet feels a tad like an oversized lobster trap, with you as the star crustacean. In these resplendent chambers, the air is imbued with scents of lavender and roasting meat, mixed with a hint of despair? Yes, let's talk about that delightful, heavy feeling of isolation, shall we? You may find yourself seated on an extravagant silken cushion, fidgeting with the heavy gold chain around your neck, the very symbol of everything you've given up. It's like unwrapping the last slice of cake, only to reveal an empty plate, sweetness gone, joy lost, to the heavier obligations of royal life. Your days comprise sumptuous banquets and dances swirling around you, as though you're a disk of butter, sizzling in a medieval frying pan. But amid the cheers and conquering melodies, a different, quieter rhythm beats softly in the background. The sound of your heart, whispering tales of dreams unfulfilled and desires hidden behind those delicate, lace-trimmed curtains. Let's paint a picture, shall we? Imagine waking up at the crack of dawn, surrounded not by peace and quiet, but by the sounds of squabbling nobles arguing about the best way to roast a swan. It's not the hum of a sweet morning melody. It's more akin to a minor chord of chaos playing out in the royal court. Breakfast isn't just a meal. It's a battlefield where your every bite is scrutinized, and there's no escaping the futile debate over whether honey or jam is the superior toast accompaniment. You don't choose the toast. The toast chooses you, my friend. Much like a modern-day Zoom meeting filled with uncertainty, your royal meetings are a cacophony of nodding heads punctuated by half-hearted laughter at the court jester's puns. Ever tried to mask disdain while maintaining a polite smile? Trust me, they've mastered the fine art of the regal grimace. But let's get to the meat of this melodrama. Your life consists of responsibilities that seem as endless as the list of chores your teenage self claimed would take forever. You have lands to oversee, more than you've ever seen in a televised home makeover show. Yet your hands are as constrained as a cat in a bath. Oh, joy! I'm practically a general, but all I can do is watch. You might even ponder if you're under a spell, a princess spell, where freedom is a distant memory, sort of like that expired coupon that'll never see the light of day again. And children, should we dive into the realm of pint-sized royals? Your lovely offspring, darlings of the court, are a constant reminder of your maternal duties, like living in a perpetual episode of Super Nanny, but with even less chocolate in your life. Married, yes, but your heart is like a well-preserved manuscript, closed and untouched. Am I still me, or have I turned into this ornate caricature, a posh painting with so many layers no one remembers the girl beneath? There's only so much passing conversation with courtiers about the latest fashion trends and the most strategic way to arrange a banquet seating chart. Can anyone explain why this is so important? Isn't a sparkling tiara and a ludicrously draped gown enough to distract your ladies-in-waiting from noticing if you've mistakenly mixed up the jelly with the roast. You recline in your royal chair, trapped in a web spun with expectations, like a hapless fly that gets a bit too curious. The isolation wraps around you tighter. It whispers secrets about a life where you control your choices. Will it always be
A choice between playing the perfect princess and embracing the messy reality of being a person.
And just when you think it couldn't get any more absurd, a courtier asks if you'd attend afternoon tea with the family of a particularly disgruntled noble. Ah, yes. Nothing says intimacy like the threat of political alliance over a lukewarm cup of herbal infusion. So, dear dreamers, as you nestle into your pillows tonight, remember that behind the walls of that magnificent castle lies a soul yearning for freedom. Cloaked in royal splendor, behind the layers of silk and gold, there lives a woman systematically kept from her dreams, a poignant note playing gently beneath the overly cheerful tunes of courtly life. And who knows, as you drift off to sleep, let yourself dream of the princess who breaks free, riding horseback into the realm of unknown adventures, perhaps with a snack tucked into her gown for good measure. It's always time for a midnight snack, even if it involves a royal dash to the pantry.
Chapter 23. The Quest for Knowledge in Silken Cages.
Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're diving into something fluffier than a feather boa on a summer day. The totally not so glamorous hidden life of a medieval princess. Yes, you heard it right. Prepare yourselves for tales spicier than a roasted rat in a gluttonous feast, and sweeter than honeymead, but alas, increasingly bittersweet. Unlimited access to glittering jewels and frothy beverages doesn't necessarily mean free rein to explore the wonders of the world. Oh no, we're about to embark on a journey that's as restrictive as the laces in your grandma's favorite corset. But before we plunge into this nautical nonsense of noble life, I invite you to smash that like button, subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this nonsense, and saunter on down to the comments to share your thoughts. Think of it as being your own courtier, bestowing compliments upon my royal quips. Now, dim those lights, let your softest blanket envelop you like a fine tapestry, and prepare for questions swirling through your mind like the scent of freshly baked bread. Ever wonder what it's like to live in a castle where the highlight of your week is watching peasants attempt to juggle 3 apples? Have you ever considered the mental gymnastics required to smile while dodging incessant marriage proposals from suitors who look like they're one soggy potato away from complete disarray? And what about being the woman unceremoniously tasked with birthing heirs while secretly dreaming of building the first royal library? Talk about a tale of 2 legacies. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the year 1364, the very peak of the Middle Ages, when the best form of Instagram was sketching your own portrait and hoping to catch a noble's eye. Here you are, the pampered princess, but there's an itch beneath your silken sleeves. You can practically hear the faint whispers of parchment calling your name. Books of philosophy, astronomy, deep thoughts, and the history of why your suitors often resemble flustered owls. The castle is buzzing, But truth be told, it might feel more like a bee swarm than a royal court. Let's step into your splendid yet stifling world. Imagine walking down corridors adorned with tapestries that tell tales more riveting than the tales yourself. Yet, instead of freedom, you're encased in layers of silk, heavy with royal expectations, begrudgingly aware that your greatest adventure revolves around finding the best place to hide your beloved books, or ye old guilty pleasure scrolls, as you might call them. Let's be real. Adding a royal library sounds like a brilliant escape plan, but the question lingers in the air. Will the other princesses snicker behind their hand-sewn fans? Oh, darling, who do you think you are, encouraging wisdom? They might exclaim, as if knowledge were more offensive than a well-burnt pie at a feast. You tread lightly upon the marble floors, navigating through noble meetings filled with discussions more dull than a knight's unsharpened sword. Shall we debate the merits of using gold versus silver in our goblet embellishments again? One baron queries, with the gravitas of world-changing conversation. You think to yourself, couldn't we banter about whether fish or fowl is the more worthy mealtime companion while wearing a crown that doesn't give me a headache? Ah, those dreams of crafting a royal library amidst the banquets are particularly delicious. The vision sprouting in your mind, 4 centuries ahead of the fun selves, those sly scholars who dared to twirl their parchments and seek revolutionary ideas. The thought of dust motes dancing lazily in sunlight, filtering through colorful stained glass windows, almost brings a smile to your lips. But alas, you can almost hear the court's so-called wisdom echoing instead. A library? But darling, what useful purpose would it serve?
After all, knowledge can't possibly give you a handsome husband. As if love wasn't at least partially based on knowing if one could properly grill a boar and make them laugh. Priorities, right? Let's talk about your beloved, ambitious quest for literature, shall we? Imagine amidst the pomp, you actually secure permission to establish this veritable treasure trove of information. Slipping scrolls beneath layers of silk and satin drapery is quite the art. We're talking clandestine operations on par with a medieval heist film. Knowledge is power, yes, but so is ensuring no one notices when you sneak away from obligatory embroidery lessons. Visions flutter through your mind of dusty tomes filled with all the exhilarating thoughts of the ages, the sort of stuff that could rival the craziest gossip swirling at the last royal feast. The gossip merry-go-round spins madly. Have you heard what Lady Agnes said about that cheeky bard? He's declaring himself a man of many rhymes, while still managing to misplace the punchline of every jest he tells. In your heart, you silently vow to hoard knowledge like a dragon hoards gold. The library becomes your gilded cage of freedom, breathing life into dreams that often feel hedged in by walls and suffocated by the blockade of your daily obligations, like the jumbles of petticoats that surround your ankles. Ah, yes, ambition swells within you like a balloon at a festival, delightful, a bit wobbly,
and poised to pop at any moment. So, as the echoes of clattering plates and futile conversations lull you into the land of dreams, always remember to dream big, sweet princess. Perhaps tonight, let your imagination wander through your imaginary library, where knowledge twirls around elegantly, whispering secrets in the softest letters. And remember, just like every great story, the adventure of a medieval princess wishing for something more often starts with a single secret page turned under the cover of moonlight. Sleep tight, dear dreamers, and may tomorrow bring your wildest dreams closer to a world of shimmering conspiracies and splendid tales. Good night. Good night. Chapter 24. A most unconventional partnership. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're wandering down the cobbled paths of history, where the air smells like hope and despair, together in a rather volatile mix, like a questionable potion brewed by a novice alchemist. You're about to embark on a journey filled with more drama than a village square on market day. The curious partnership between our noble princess and her equally noble but somewhat bewildered husband, Philip. Picture it, a political arrangement blossoming slowly into something strange and wonderful, like the occasional friendship that emerges from two people sharing a single, ridiculously oversized slice of pie. Spoiler alert, it's not just the pie that's peculiar. Get ready for a tale where every heartfelt discussion about the kingdom's future plays out with more absurdity than a mad bard reciting his latest love sonnet to a very confused donkey. But first, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this nonsense, and glide into the comments to share your thoughts. Think of it as sending a raven to your favorite minstrel. Now, dim those lights, grab your softest blanket, the one that feels like being hugged by a cloud, and let your mind wander as we explore the pressing questions of this noble life. Ever wondered what it's like to navigate a marriage where you're required to share strategies for defeating invading armies, while sprinkling in casual compliments like, "Your armor really brings out the color of your eyes"? How about discussing the intricacies of governance over a breakfast that consists of cold porridge and the mystery meat that everyone just pretends is chicken? And let's not even start on the logistics of raising an heir. You know, that most precious of responsibilities, which often resembles more of a round-the-clock babysitting gig than a royal duty. Who knew it was this hard to not let them stick a fork in the electrical socket of castle life? Congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1370. Your and Philip's union has blossomed into an unexpected duo, one that shatters all the stereotypes of romantic medieval cliches faster than a bard's lute string after a wild evening. The two of you, amidst a flamboyant tapestry where every thread whispers tales of politics and passion, are about to redefine the term power couple. Now, let's set the scene as you wade through the complexities of this arrangement. You wander the castle halls, the stone walls resonating with a history that shrieks of love and betrayal, all while trying to suppress a giggle at the sight of determined knights tripping over their own armor. Here's the deal. You and Philip have actually decided that instead of grumbling over cold porridge, you will share the burdens of the kingdom. Imagine this: two royals, not merely serving duties like reluctant serfs, but actually plotting.
Strategies, as if it were a game of chess, infested with overly dramatic pieces. The first order of business is the Grand Council meeting, which feels more like a gathering of disorganized chickens than the most feared noblemen in the realm. Discussing the kingdom's future in a room filled with lords who have distinctly questionable fashion choices, while figuring out how to tactfully suggest that Sir Reginald stop wearing those knee-length stockings, is quite the task. You and Philip exchange meaningful glances, silently agreeing that weaving in a little sarcasm might be the best way to keep spirits high. Perhaps Sir Reginald could have his own fashion line, Philip quips. We'd call it Unfortunate Decisions by a Knight. The council meeting trudges along, where topics range from a recent wolf attack to the surprisingly complicated logistics of heirloom tomato farmers. Nothing says high-stakes politics like arguing over who mislabeled a bushel of produce during Last week's harvest.
You lean over to Philip, stifling laughter as you whisper, "Next they'll want to discuss the color of the flags we should fly during harvest festivals. You know, very pressing issues." Together, you and Philip present plans, legendary plans, filled with an unexpected mix of enthusiasm and a generous dash of absurdity. As you outline the kingdom's needs, from education reforms to why Sir Reginald should never be allowed to select a feast menu again, the other lords shift uneasily in their seats. "My dear lords," you proclaim with flair, "if you think Sir Reginald's taste buds are the talk of the town now, just wait until he attempts a surprise roasted pie filled with—" And just like that, laughter erupts, turning the meeting from a grave affair into a raucous event where every noble becomes a reluctant participant in your comedic spectacle. These meetings give way to intimate discussions, all while accustomed court courtesies are
Marred with jokes that would make even the most pious bishop chuckle.
Imagine the two of you pacing through gardens, blooming with the scent of roses, breathlessly debating whether a direct line of communication with the villagers might reduce wolf sightings in the region. "I mean," you smirk, "what do we have to lose? Maybe we can train the sheep to hold a council of their own. They could be terribly effective negotiators." And lo, the discussions of governance and strategies become a shared adventure full of quirks and humor, much more riveting than any ditty about knights in shining armor ever attempted to convey. With your synergy, navigating the tangles of leadership feels surprisingly easy, like sliding down a slick hill of freshly churned butter. This budding bromance, and yes, I said bromance, is more sustaining than any banquet feast laid before you. Ah, the rhythm of life as a princess in this gilded cage begins to resemble a dance rather than a drudgery. And the realization dawns that while you may have started your journey in absolute confinement, your partnership with Philip is blossoming into a tapestry of absurdity, every thread stitched with laughter, respect, and maybe just a hint of mischief. As night descends upon the castle, and the gentle whispers of the wind coax you into a space where dreams await, Let this partnership be a reminder that sometimes the most unconventional unions can lead to the most delightful adventures. Sleep tight, dear dreamer, as tales of camaraderie and joy wrap around you like the coziest cloak. May the imaginings of tomorrow lead you further into the riotous tapestry of life. Good night.
Chapter 25. The Weight of Tradition and a Touch of Silk.
Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we find ourselves in a world where being a medieval princess is more complex than trying to schedule a nap amid an existential crisis, complete with ruffled silks and a family tree that resembles a bad game of Twister. You're about to embark on a journey that's softer than a cloud made of marshmallows, and yet, somehow, holds the weight of 100 decorative goblets. Imagine lounging about on a velvety cushion, all while contemplating the art of diplomacy, fielding love letters from suitors who think thou art fairer than the finest hay bale. Spoiler alert, this is not just a mere fairy tale. You'll experience the struggle of being part of a long line of women who manage to influence kingdoms while spinning wool, raising heirs, and fending off those ludicrous fashion trends meant for hefty knights who can't turn around without clanging like a piece of malfunctioning armor. But before we set our course through the whimsical corridors of a princess's life, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this nonsense, and share your deep thoughts in the comments. Think of it as sending a raven to your favorite minstrel to let them know you're still alive and dreaming. Now, dim those lights, grab a blanket softer than a butterfly's first flight, and let your mind float gently into a world of medieval quirks. Ever wondered what it's like to touch something that binds you to your ancestry, while also dodging the marriage proposals from knights who clearly took a few too many knocks to the helmet? How about contemplating the complexities of royalty while secretly wishing you could rub off some of that silk onto the nearest peasant just to see what would happen? Spoiler alert, it wouldn't be pretty. And what's it like to be the heir to a throne that requires more etiquette classes than a modern-day Instagram influencer has followers? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1370, amidst the sprawling tapestries and delightful chaos of medieval grandeur. Your fingers graze over a delicate ring you received from your mother, a shimmering link to your past, reminding you that you're part of a powerful lineage filled with women who faced their own peculiar set of challenges. In this castle, life may look like a cozy fairy tale on the surface, as smooth as the fabric draped across your chair, but underneath it flows a river of rules, expectations, and emotional shenanigans thicker than oatmeal porridge left out on the counter for a fortnight. You sit in your plush chamber, where the faint flicker of candlelight dances on the walls, like a troupe of aspiring bards desperately trying to win over a hardened audience. Let's talk about that ring for a moment, shall we? A beautiful piece wrought from gold and adorned with gems that glint like the eyes of a sassy cat at sunrise. It's not just a piece of jewelry. It's a legacy, a talisman reminding you of women who were fierce, cunning, and occasionally quite ridiculous, just like you. You gently caress it, feeling the warmth it retains as if it could share tales of conquests over cold mutton and half-hearted embroidery contests. In the quiet moments of your evening solitude, your thoughts drift to the squeaky wheels of history that have rolled through your family tree, like the one where your great-aunt Beatrice once dared to wear a colored gown and caused a scandal that clattered through the courts. What did she think? She would be arrested for accessorizing? You chuckle softly. As you lean back, allowing the heavy gowns and expectations to lift for just a moment, you're struck by the realization that each woman who wore this ring left footprints etched in the pages of history, remarkably absurd and yet undeniably remarkable. They might not have wielded swords, but they carried the burdens of kingdoms on their shoulders, plotting secret alliances while scolding inadequate tailors who dared to sew their gowns with less pride than a blacksmith approaching a horseshoe. They knew how to navigate male-dominated council meetings filled with bumbling lords who thought gilded meant just add more gold leaf, a concept that would make you roll your eyes harder than a pigeon dodging an oncoming hawk. Your musings are interrupted by courtyard sounds drifting through the window, the cacophony of squawking geese, and the gentle hum of a bard who may or may not be having an existential crisis in front of a captivated audience. Oh, the drama. Did you hear what Lady Elwood said about her last betrothal? They gossip. Why, it rivals the tales of yore. Ah, yes, the tattered tales of romance that hover in the air like a poorly aimed cabbage in a game of medieval dodgeball. Should I tell them my love life isn't quite as scandalous as they believe? You think to yourself, weighing your options like a careful cook considering a recipe for disaster. But here's the truth. You have inherited the gift of resilience, a treasure worth more than all the crowns in the kingdom. The ring serves as a constant reminder that while your life may feel like an elaborately arranged game of chess, where no one really knows the rules, but everyone's too proud to admit it, you are precisely where you need to be, forging connections as intricate as a lace doily made in a widow's knitting circle. So, let the world spin around you, filled with its grandiose absurdities and charming shenanigans. It's no longer just a gilded cage. It's a playground of possibilities, laughter, and the fierce electricity of a lineage that made its mark, despite the odds. As you close your eyes and frame yourself in this tapestry of womanhood, let the laughter and strength wash over you like warm sunlight trickling through the castle windows, whispering secrets of yesteryears while carrying you gently into restful slumber. As our quiet walk through stone corridors and candlelit chambers comes to an end, it's worth lingering for just a moment on the lives we've shared tonight. Medieval princesses lived surrounded by beauty, silk gowns, gilded halls, carefully stitched tapestries. Yet their days were filled with cold rooms, heavy expectations, and choices made long before they could speak for themselves. They endured early mornings that bit with frost, long hours bound into uncomfortable finery, endless rituals, lessons, and negotiations that turned their lives into living symbols. And yet, through all of it, they survived. They laughed where they could. They found small joys in letters, stories, music, and shared glances. Sometimes the humor was all that made the weight bearable. A poorly cooked meal, an ill-fitting gown, a courtly mishap that reminded them they were still human. There's something deeply moving about that resilience. To live inside a gilded cage and still keep a sense of self. That is no small strength. Now gently return to your own space. Notice the warmth around you, the freedom to stretch, to breathe deeply, to rest without permission. Clean sheets, quiet air. A night where sleep is not stolen between duties, but offered freely. These comforts are easy to overlook, yet they are extraordinary gifts. You don't need to solve history tonight. You don't need to carry its burdens forward. Let them rest where they belong, in the past, honored, remembered, and released. So allow your breathing to slow. Let your thoughts soften. Let the images fade like candlelight at dawn. The world is quieter now. You are safe, and rest is waiting. Sleep gently, dear listener. Sleep peacefully.